Chapter 1829. Wang Ling's slender fingers were as white as jade, and they released a terrifying spiritual pressure under the burst of spirit light. Immortal chi filled the air, and holy light shone everywhere, enveloping the entire all-heaven city as well as the dozens of outer god palaces hanging down from above. It was obvious to the naked eye that these pitch-black outer god palaces were beginning to transform. As if they had been plated with a layer of gold paint, they turned from pitch-black to gold and gradually assimilated with the all-heaven city. This engulfing force was too strong, and the terrifying spiritual pressure shook violently and crushed everything. As Wang Ling's palm closed, the speed at which the pitch-black outer god palaces were being engulfed gradually accelerated. Old 6 was startled again. He had originally wanted to use these outer god palaces to fight Wang Ling as an equal in the all-heavens world, but he hadn't expected that his behavior would instead be giving Wang Ling a big gift. He instantly raised his hand, and the hybrid ancient god behind him did the same hand seal as him to resist desperately in an attempt to withdraw these outer god palaces. Once the outer god palaces were assimilated again, the all-heavens world would expand and become even more powerful than before. F***ck, he already couldn't beat them. Old 6 couldn't help cursing in his heart. He rarely cursed, but as one of the lofty 6 great guardians of the holy race and one of the holy venerables. He had never speculated about the earth's cultivators with the greatest malice, but he never thought that the earth's cultivators would be strong enough to make him swear. But even at this point, he didn't think that he had no chance of winning. Because for the holy race, which attached great importance to the power of bloodlines, no matter how strong an earth cultivator was, he had his own limitations. Cultivation had originated from ancient times. Although it had been created by human cultivators, the major races in the universe had different bloodlines, and some races with rare bloodlines were often more talented in cultivation than human cultivators on Earth. Old 6 had seen a lot of things in his lifetime. Although he was the youngest of the 6 great guardians and had the lowest seniority, he was recognized as a genius in the holy race. The power of his bloodline was evenly distributed, and he was known as the proud son of heaven of the holy race with a golden ratio. Even when he was cultivating, he was always by the side of the holy king. When he was sparring, the other 5 protectors would be his sparring partner. It was not an exaggeration to call him a group pet. In the eyes of the sacred race, Old 6 was the type of person who would grow stronger the more he fought, and he was someone who would grow stronger the stronger he met the stronger he was. The other sacred race members watching the battle also had no doubt that Old 6 would make a new breakthrough in this battle and reach an even higher level. At that moment, he was doing his best to fight Wang Ling for sovereignty over the outer god palace, not for anything else, but for pride. He had summoned it himself. If Wang Ling took it away just like that, it would be too humiliating. Thus, Old 6 mustered all his strength, and his face turned red as he fought for Wang Ling. The hybrid ancient god behind him had the same expression as him, and at that moment, both of them put on pain masks, which made them look very different. In contrast, Wang Ling had maintained a relaxed posture from beginning to end as he stood in the air, his school uniform fluttering in the wind. From time to time, 6 exerted pressure on Wang Ling's 5 fingers, which were slowly closing together, and then Wang Ling would regain control and close them again, as if he was arm wrestling with 6. What's Lingzi doing? Hero Guo frowned as he watched this scene from a distance. What else can he be doing? Just playing. Super Chen already had no energy to complain. He could clearly sense that Wang Ling still had a lot to spare. But the reason why Wang Ling hadn't chosen to end the match was very obvious. He wanted to torture this Old 6 in front of him. Looking back, Super Chen felt that Shadow Stream back then had really been child's play. How could a normal human cultivator from Earth be a match for this freak in front of him? Now that they had finally been matched with a cosmic powerhouse, it seemed pretty normal for them to show off their skills. Furthermore, delaying for so long was actually beneficial to their own cultivation. As expected of Lingzi. While he's playing, he's actually thinking about us at the same time. At that moment, Hero Guo was suddenly a little moved as he said, "It's very rare to have a chance to watch a battle up close like this, and we may never have such an experience in our entire lives. Watching from the sidelines is beneficial to our own cultivation. Don't you think so, boss son? Ah, yes. You're right. It's indeed very helpful to our cultivation. Lotus Sun gave her trademark fake smile, then put her hand to her forehead with a helpless expression on her face. She was overthinking things, and it was clear that she had a very serious case of enlightenment. Although watching a high-level cultivator fight was indeed helpful to the cultivation of a low-level cultivator, once the Immortal King's shield was removed, they wouldn't be able to remember anything and wouldn't be able to figure it out. Wang Ling stared at Ghost Old Six, who had used up all his strength. After a few more minutes of stalemate, and confirming that Ghost Old Six didn't have any more strength left, he decided to end the match. Effortlessly, he directly clenched his fist, and in that instant, the black outer deity palaces were completely assimilated and turned golden, becoming part of the buildings of all nations in the city of all heavens. When the connection to the outer deity palaces was broken, Ghost Old Six immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The pain of the backlash was directly connected to his nerves, and his mind was shaken at the same time. You tricked me, then, he gnashed his teeth and stared at Wang Ling. Even if Wang Ling hadn't said it, Ghost Old Six could sense that Wang Ling had pretended to be arm wrestling him with all his might just now, but in fact, Wang Ling had been playing with him. Wang Ling clearly had the strength to end the match very quickly, but it was like he was playing with a monkey, giving him the illusion that he could take back the outer deity palaces. I'll never let you off. Ghost Old Six trembled with anger. After the outer deity palaces were taken, he had immediately swallowed a bright glazed elixir to suppress his injuries, and at the same time, he released streams of primal chaos chi from his hands. This was a strange hand seal, which made Wang Ling frown at the same time. Ghost Old Six movements were quick, and as the hand seal changed, it expounded on a strange truth of the Great Tao. Unexpectedly, there were many great Taos that even Wang Ling had never seen fused together in this strange hand seal. And then bang. There was a bang. Ghost Old Six and the hybrid ancient god behind him put their palms together. In that instant, heaven and earth twisted, and a mystical ball of light was summoned in the center of Ghost Old Six's palms. Wang Ling had already focused his king's eye, and through the light ball's screen, he saw this summoning magic artifact wrapped in endless charm. He was astonished. Because this was the only person Wang Ling had met so far. The only person who had taken out a level 5 chaos sequence weapon. Level 5 creation chaos weapon. Era compass. Chapter 1830. To be honest, this was the first time Wang Ling had seen someone take out a creation-level chaos weapon in a duel. A 5th-ranked chaos weapon usually meant that it had the power to control important nomological laws. The era pointer was an existence born from chaos interwoven with the nomological laws of time. It was just making its appearance, but the earth-shattering deterrence it exuded was already overwhelming. Everything around them seemed to be draped in a Taoist robe of time, and signs of collapse appeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the power of aging controlled by the era pointer. Thus, the moment he sensed the power of the era pointer, Wang Ling acted almost at the same time to stack hundreds of millions of layers on everyone's Immortal King shields. He could sense that the Immortal King shields were weakening under the power of the era pointer. Yes, it wasn't that the era pointer itself had the power to break the Immortal King shields, but that it was using its immortal nomological laws of time to adjust the spell's effective duration. Once the spell expired, even the Immortal King's shields would be as brittle as paper. When the time came, it would be effortless to break them. Wang Ling was secretly astonished. This creation-level chaos weapon was indeed as difficult to deal with as he had imagined. To some extent, it was even more troublesome to deal with than the grave god, who had inherited outer god Sothatha's power. With the era pointer's reversal of time, almost everything around it was on the verge of collapse. If it wasn't for the Immortal King's shields, everyone in number 60 high and the Maelstrom Emperor would have already become living fossils. Even the heavens were affected by the era pointer. In the Golden City of Heavens, the walls of the buildings of the universe's 10,000 races began to collapse. Golden powder fell from the walls, and everything entered an old state under the influence of the era pointer. Wang Ling felt a sense of discomfort as an overwhelming aura of lethargy washed over him. It's working. That's right. Old Six, that's it. Don't give him any chance. Far away on the other side of the sky, the Holy Race clansmen who were watching the battle through the other universe embryo applauded. They could clearly sense that Wang Ling was being affected by the era pointer, and that his actions and thoughts seemed to be much slower than before. He, who told him to be so arrogant? The era pointer's aging power is an area of effect attack, and the entire heavens will be affected. He thinks he's the god of this world, but when he encounters this creation-grade chaos tool, I'm afraid it's like a scholar meeting a soldier. The Saint clansman in the distance sneered. Not only does he have to take care of himself, but he also has to take care of those Foundation Establishment and Golden Core ants down there. Their spiritual shields have also lost their effectiveness under the power of aging, and he has to consume his own spiritual energy to constantly add new spiritual shields. If this goes on, no matter how strong he is, once the spiritual energy in his body is exhausted, it will be useless. They judged the situation and discussed it loudly. They all agreed that Gue Laolu had gained the upper hand. But Wang Ling's side was far more resilient than they had imagined. Under normal circumstances, a person who was constantly baptized by the pointer of the era would have long since become a living fossil. Although this young man from Earth seemed to be affected, his appearance was still that of a young man. Gue Laolu thought it was a bit outrageous. It had already been half a century, but Wang Ling's face still looked as childish as ever. It hadn't changed at all. Just how long was this person's lifespan? Yes. It had only been a few minutes since the era pointer had been brought out, but more than half a century had already passed. Wang Ling looked at his hands, which were still as white as jade, and somehow felt that this kind of aging didn't have much of an effect on his body. He had wanted to experience what aging felt like, but he hadn't expected that he wouldn't age at all. Of course, there was something else that Wang Ling hadn't expected. After the era pointer had been adjusted for half a century, the Tao Talisman seal on his body had also completely lost its effectiveness due to the power of aging. Bzz. In the next breath, Wang Ling's aura was completely released, and an enormous amount of energy overflowed from his body, causing the world to become hazy, as if even heaven and earth had been disturbed and stopped functioning. Wang Ling secretly cursed. He had forgotten to count on the Tao Talisman's seal on his body, and never expected that in this state, his power would be completely liberated. Boom! When the Tao Talisman seal completely lost its effectiveness and his power erupted, countless magic rings started to appear on Wang Ling's body. Like a god descending, the era pointer's power of aging was ineffective against him. The magic rings on his body contained a halo of magic immunity, which directly rendered the creation-level chaos weapon useless. Gue Lao's expression changed. He had clearly adjusted it to half a century later. He had thought that this youngster would age and become weaker than before, but he had never expected Wang Ling to actually hold back in their fight earlier, and not use all his strength. It was only at this moment that the Tao Talisman seal had lost its effectiveness, and Wang Ling's power completely erupted. All liberated, many people down below were stupefied, and Lotus Sun's face was filled with other emotions besides astonishment. Fortunately, this wasn't Earth, and there was still room to turn things around. If Wang Ling had been directly unsealed on Earth, the entire planet might have collapsed in an instant. Gue Laolu thought that Wang Ling would become weak due to aging, but he never thought that Wang Ling, whose power had been completely liberated, would be like a demon god. It was just the power of Wang Ling's physical body, but he was already unable to resist it. Boom! Wang Ling charged forward fearlessly. Gue Lao's entire body was nailed to the spot by this kind of oppressive force, and he couldn't move even half a step. In a moment of desperation, he could only mobilize the era pointer's nomological power in an attempt to block Wang Ling's attack, forming a net to try and stop him. But Wang Ling had no intention of stopping at all, and the era pointer's nomological net couldn't stop his attack at all. With a click, the pointer was directly knocked askew by Wang Ling's headbutt. Gue Laolu simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. A creation-level chaos weapon. An existence with the power of nomological laws, which was the highest level of the fifth sequence, had actually been knocked askew just like that. At the same time, the Holy Clan members who were watching the battle from a distance simply wanted to cry when they saw this scene. They had thought that Gui Laolu would be able to smoothly win this match after summoning the era pointer, but they never thought that this Earth youngster wouldn't age at all. The older he got, the stronger he got. Even under the effect of the era pointer, his power was directly liberated. Rumble. Wang Ling's headbutt finally hit Gui Laolu's body like a cannonball from outer space. Accompanied by a burst of golden light, most of Gui Laolu's body had already been smashed into nothingness by Wang Ling, and blood flowed everywhere. This kind of impact was really too ferocious. After all, Wang Ling's power had been completely liberated, and it really wasn't easy for him to control it. Fortunately, after he broke the era pointer, the previously adjusted time returned to normal, and the Dao Talisman seal also returned from its expired state. Wang Ling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, during the collision just now, Wang Ling had also been thinking about countermeasures to restore the Dao Talisman seal. This was far more important than killing Gui Laolu. What if it really couldn't be restored? Gui Laolu's action of summoning the era pointer could directly lead to the destruction of the universe. Chapter 1831. He had been taken down, even though he had already taken out the era compass. Even this creation-level chaos artifact had suffered a devastating blow from the other party's headhammer. He was the sixth protector of the sacred tribe, the most talented youth of the sacred tribe. He had been taught by the Holy King and was the favorite of the sacred tribe. He had never cared about any alien life outside of the sacred tribe. But Ghost Sixth had never imagined that he would be defeated in such a way. The intense pain of losing half of his body made it difficult for him to calm down in a short period of time. He spat out blood as most of his body was destroyed. This wasn't completely fatal to his physique, but he would have to pay a huge price to fully recover. There was often no need for excuses in a confrontation between experts. Even though Ghost Sixth wasn't convinced, he understood that if Wang Ling's headhammer had been a little more accurate just now, he would have died straight away, and wouldn't even have had the right to stand here. The vital point of a holy race member was the upper body. Only when the upper body was completely destroyed did death occur. Otherwise, there was a possibility of recovery as long as a single cell was left. Old Six actually lost? On the other side of the universe, the rest of the holy race members who were watching the battle had incredulous expressions on their faces. They had never expected an Earth cultivator to be so powerful. The era compass was Holy King's trump card, and he had given it to Ghost Sixth for self-defense back then. He had thought that if he took it out at this critical moment, he would be able to turn the tide and win outright. Who would have thought that half a century later, this young man from Earth who wouldn't age would become even more ferocious than before? How could little brother Six lose? Is this person really an Earthling? Why do I feel like it's very strange? A woman's voice came from among the remaining 5 protectors. She was the 4th protector, and in Ghost Sixth's eyes, the 4th sister. Apart from the Holy King, it was this 4th guardian who usually took care of Ghost Sixth the most. Seeing Ghost Sixth's miserable defeat, this 4th guardian who had a brother complex was clearly anxious, and even started to question Wang Ling's identity as an Earthling. It wasn't entirely her fault for being suspicious. Wang Ling was indeed too strong, beyond the scope of a normal Earth cultivator's understanding, and it gave off the illusion that his worldview had been refreshed. Can't afford to lose? At that moment, Wang Ying's voice came from inside Wang Ling's body. Wang Ling had already done all the physical work, and it was only appropriate for Wang Ying to take over the rest of the negotiation. As the cold voice rang out, a pitch-black silhouette instantly appeared on Wang Ling's body, which then turned into a black shadow that condensed into a human figure with the same face as Wang Ling's. Down below, the number 60 high crowd was dumbfounded again. This is a shadow clone? Hero Guo was puzzled. It doesn't look like it. The hair color is different. It's white. Super Chen frowned and said, also, I feel that his personality is different from Lingzi's. I don't know why, but there's a very abnormal feeling about him. Hearing this, Lotus Sun suddenly felt that Chinese culture was broad and profound. It was very obvious that this pervert and the one who had described Wang Ling were two completely different things. In the air, when Wang Ying heard Super Chen's description, the corners of his mouth twitched, but he didn't flare up because he was a student of number 60 high. Sun Yinger, who was hibernating in Lotus Sun's body, immediately burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, I never thought this big would have such a day. In the face of Wang Ying's sudden appearance, the Holy Clan people on the other side of the universe were clearly on guard. They could tell that Wang Ying wasn't weak, and seemed to have a bad temper, which made him even more difficult to provoke than Wang Ling. We don't know what trick you used, but the battle just now doesn't count. If you have the ability, fight us again, and we'll send our people. If you win, we'll give you the epic compass, said one of the Holy Clan people. It was still that Guardian 4. My lord and I, what do you want this broken needle for? Wang Ying laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand and a snap of his fingers, a treasure that had been sealed in Wang Zhibao's pants was immediately projected in front of everyone. It was a towering clock tower. The huge pendulum and clock dial exuded an immortal aura, and the entire clock tower was filled with the law of time, which was dozens of times faster than the epic compass. Epic clock tower, Ghost Old 6 and the Holy Clan people were stunned. They recognized the origin of this chaos artifact, and never expected it to be the legendary epic clock tower, which was one of the three pieces of the law of time: the epic compass, the epic clock dial, and the epic clock tower. The epic compass was in their hands, and was the smallest component. In Wang Zhibao's pants, the epic clock dial and the epic clock tower had already merged together, so whether or not they had the epic compass didn't mean much to Wang Ling. Then what do you want? These Holy Clan people were instantly speechless and completely dumbfounded. They had thought that they were rich enough to use the epic compass as a wager in an attempt to fight again, but they hadn't expected Wang Ling and Wang Ying to be even more aggressive and directly bring the clock tower. Our request is very simple. Let's talk about the additional conditions first, then the main ones. There are additional conditions? Hee hee, it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. If you don't. Wang Ying laughed. His figure was like a ghost as he pressed one hand on Ghost Old 6's shoulder, who was recovering from his injuries. This was a threat, because there was a huge amount of energy in his palm. With just a little bit of force, Ghost Old 6 would immediately explode without any chance of survival. Don't be impulsive. Let's talk it out. As the Holy Clan's group pet, these Holy Clan people from the other side of the universe naturally didn't want to see Ghost Old 6 die in battle. There are 3 additional conditions. Seeing that the negotiations had been formed, Wang Ying said, First, your Holy King must abandon Tengu and stop interfering in the disputes of Earth's cultivators. Also, release the actual control of Tengu and hand it over to someone we designate. Secondly, the 3 ancient royals you sent earlier, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion-Headed Man, and the Dream Tribe's Meng Lioli, are now our captives and have agreed to join us. You can't take them back. Third, you are not allowed to ally with other cosmic forces that are unfavorable to Earth. If we find out about this, your Holy Clan won't be able to establish a foothold in the universe. Annihilation of your race is only the lightest punishment. After these 3 additional conditions, the Holy Clan people on the other side of the universe fell silent. They were angry but didn't dare to say anything. At this point, Wang Ying coughed lightly and put forward the last main condition. The last main condition is also very simple. You have lost this battle, so you need to compensate for the psychological damage. The Holy Clan people gritted their teeth. The chief protector with the rough voice said, Say it, how much money or spirit stones do you want? It's very cheap. At this time, Wang Ying said with a smile, a cosmic fetus will do. Chapter 1832. For the holy race, this was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Ever since the holy race had been founded, they had never compromised with other civilizations. As an ancient civilization that had survived several baptisms since ancient times, their faces were stiff and bitter, and they felt that this was extremely difficult. Did they really have to surrender? At the same time, for them who were familiar with Earth's civilization, this behavior seemed to be similar to the daily milk method that was being discussed online. Signing a treaty and raising a white flag in surrender were essentially the same. Wang Ying smiled. That nightmare fetus isn't much use to you, is it? It's just a telescope and a microphone, and won't be of any real value in your hands. It's better to trade it for this Mr. Sixth's life. He egged them on. Hearing this, the holy race protectors all looked at each other. Wang Ying was actually right. The nightmare fetus was indeed a little overkill in their hands. If it wasn't for the power of the Great Old One's bloodline, they probably wouldn't even be able to use its most basic functions. However, they were well aware of the value of the nightmare fetus. Even if it wasn't of any real value now, it was a strategic reserve. Hence, they were very conflicted. The additional conditions could be discussed, but it was really hard for them to decide whether to trade for the nightmare fetus as the main condition. The point was that as protectors, they didn't have the right to choose, and everything depended on the Holy King. We can accept the additional conditions at the beginning, but we can't make a decision on this matter. However, we are unable to make a decision on this matter. We need to seek the opinion of His Highness the Holy King. In the end, the chief protector with the rough voice spoke. Okay. Wang Ying nodded and said, I can also return the person to you first. But this little brother has already been hit by a nomological bomb called Emperor Killer. If we don't reach an agreement in the end, we'll have to take the person with us. Emperor Killer, the holy race people were stupefied. They had never expected Wang Ling and Wang Ying to have a way to set up nomological bombs. And they had actually agreed to return the person first. Hearing this, Protector 4 immediately sneered and said from the other side of the universe, they're too confident. If they're going to return Sixth Brother just like that, why don't we just study how to defuse the bomb? No, since they dared to give the person to us first, they must be confident that we won't be able to defuse the bomb. I think they're blindly confident. The 5 of us, in addition to His Highness the Holy King. How could he not deal with a law bomb? If it really doesn't work, we can help Sixth Brother reconstruct his body. As long as he can come back, there are many ways to help Sixth Brother escape. After a few rounds of discussion, Wang Ying finally received an affirmative answer from the few sacred clan protectors. It was the Great Protector who transmitted his voice through the universe devil fetus. The deadline is set at 5 days. Within 5 days, we will definitely give you an accurate answer. Hearing that, Wang Ying only smiled, all right. Then we will wait for you for 5 days. However, you have to fulfill the additional conditions first. Regarding this, you can make the decision, right? Of course. Chief Guardian said affirmatively, in fact, we've almost finished our research on modern human cultivators. I didn't intend to continue hiding. Wang Ying chuckled, he just took those words as a joke. Then, he let go of his hand on Ghost Sixth's shoulder and instantly opened his king's eye to send Ghost Sixth out of the infinite worlds with its power. It lasted for 5 days. The universe devil fetus would be used in exchange for Sixth Protector's life. Wang Ling and Wang Ying naturally knew that the other party would definitely try to remove this law bomb related to the Emperor Killer, but there had to be a reason why it was called a law bomb. This was an unsolvable bomb that would follow the soul. Whether it was transferring the body or reconstructing the soul, it was useless. As long as the caster didn't remove it, any other method would be useless. At the same time, Wang Ling started to clean up the mess in front of him as he led everyone out of the world. At the same time, he removed the Immortal King's shields on everyone. Super Chen, Hirogwa, and the others felt like they had just woken up from a dream, and everything seemed to have happened in a daze. When they returned to the car, Super Chen was sitting in the back seat with his arms crossed as he muttered to Hirogwa, which made Wang Ling sweat profusely. Old Gua, don't you feel like you forgot something? Super Chen asked with a frown. That's normal. Hirogwa replied very casually, actually, sometimes I also feel like this. It's like my mind suddenly goes blank and I lose a small piece of my memory. For example, I want to do something, but then I suddenly can't remember it, and I freeze on the spot. It's only after a long while that I come back to my senses. This is a sign of anxiety. But after what you said just now, I indeed feel like there are some things I can't remember. Now that you mention it, I feel the same way. I feel like I'm missing something very important from my memory. At that moment, Li Yuyue also raised her hand. As Li Yuyue spoke, even the people in the Maelstrom Emperor nodded one after another. Super Chen laughed. It's just a passing remark. It can't really be such a coincidence, right? Collective amnesia? I'm afraid we collectively saw something we shouldn't have, and our memories were erased. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Fang Xing. Early on Monday morning, January 5th, the prosecutor's office withdrew the criminal accusation that Lotus Sun was suspected of murder for hire. Scarlet Orchid Association, Madame Raven, Michael ACI, and the Heavenly Tao Alliance in Glio City, which was led by Levis, had initially focused their fire on Huaguo Water Curtain Group and Battle Sect. It ended with the four forces shedding all pretense of cordiality and fighting fiercely. The Heavenly Tao Alliance was the mediating force, but in the end, under the instigation of the fake pope played by Levis, they were also involved. No one had expected such a dispute. Before the people from number 60 High left Glio City, Madame Raven handed over control of Volwolf Supermarket to Lotus Sun as promised. Although the recording this time didn't go smoothly, I'm still a person who keeps her promises. Lotus Sun took the materials from Volwolf Supermarket and frowned deeply as she looked at them. Madame Raven, there's something I want to ask you. Please speak. Miss Sunday. Madame Raven was still sitting in an elegant posture, and showed no signs of having been involved in a power dispute or beaten up. The chaos this time was all part of Madame Raven's plan, right? At that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly asked, if I'm right, you don't belong to the church. You belong to Lord Yuan Venerate. Chapter 1833. Perhaps it was out of the sensitivity of an entrepreneur's successor, but after a comprehensive analysis, Lotus Sun finally came up with an answer that sounded unexpected but seemed completely reasonable. This was a conversation between her and Lavin, and there were no outsiders in the room. Seeing Madame Lavin silently take out a cigar from her pocket and light it, Lotus Sun began to reason further. This variety show's recording has caused a huge mess, and it definitely can't be broadcast anymore. Madam, you suffered a loss, yet you're still willing to transfer the control of Wall Wolf to me as promised. This doesn't make sense. You think it doesn't make sense? Madame Lavin said. The entire Glio City is my property, and I'm just fulfilling my promise. No need to make a fuss. I just think it's very sudden. You think it's sudden? Madame Lavin smiled meaningfully. I don't think it's sudden. This is just like Master Huang, who suddenly paid the fake county magistrate to suppress bandits in Goose City. Everything was just part of the plan. In the end, Miss Sun and I each obtained our own benefits. It seems that Madame Lavin has already admitted that she is Mr. Yuan Venerate's person. Lotus Sun asked politely. Yes or no, does it still matter to Miss Sun now? Madame Lavin paused and said, the cause of everything was indeed because of Mr. Yuan Venerate's consideration of the balance between the various forces. It's just that Mr. Yuan Venerate and I didn't expect them to fight during the variety show's recording. This way, Mr. Yuan Venerate has a reason to find trouble with them and weaken their foundation. Is this what Madame meant by benefits? Yes. Lavin nodded honestly. The loss of Wall Wolf isn't a loss to me at all because I can get a better project from Mr. Yuan Venerate. Of course, it was actually Mr. Yuan Venerate's intention to transfer the control of Wall Wolf to you. You're right. As an entrepreneur, it's impossible to give away your money for nothing when you've already suffered a loss. There are conditions, right? Lotus Sun asked. Very simple conditions. At this point, Madame Lavin took out a delicate notebook wrapped in pure gold from her arms. She clearly felt a sense of weight when she handed it to Lotus Sunday. At this moment, Madame Lavin said slowly, I heard that you know the Grey Sect Master? Huh? Lotus Sun was clearly stunned. The Yuan Venerate said that this is a literary organization. Also, the president of this organization is from number 60 High. You should know him, right? As far as I know, he's a greedy and hot-blooded man. Lotus Sun was shocked. She suspected that the person Madame Raven was talking about was a combination of Super Chen and Hero Gua. Of course, what shocked her even more was that she didn't expect the Grey Church's influence to be so great that even the head of a cultivation country knew about it. After thinking for a moment, Lotus Sun nodded and said, I know him, this is the notebook of the Yuan Venerate's grandson. He has been very interested in literature recently and hopes to join the Grey sect. If it's possible, I hope you can help the Grey Church's hierarch sign his name on the title page of the notebook. Lotus Sun frowned. She was very careful, repeatedly wondering if there was any other purpose or trap in this. However, his cautious expression made Madame Lavin laugh again. Look at you, so cautious. It doesn't matter. Whether I get this signature or not, it won't affect Sir Yuan Venerate's decision to order me to give the wall wolf to you. If you have any misgivings, just return this notebook to me. As soon as she said this, Lotus Sun suddenly felt that her status was still too low. Compared with these foreign female entrepreneurs who had been on the battlefield for a long time, she indeed lacked experience. This was clearly a way to advance by retreating. Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree, losing face. After all, Lotus Sun had always considered herself to be magnanimous, so it would be a little too unmagnanimous to refuse like this. She was cautious because she was worried that the existence of the Grey Church would be used by people with ulterior motives. In Lotus Sun's opinion, it wasn't a good thing for the head of a cultivation country to suddenly set his eyes on such a literary organization. Lotus Sun even suspected that there might be some problems with this notebook, but she didn't dare to check it directly in front of Madame Lavin. Thus, after thinking it over, she went with the flow and said, I can sign it. But the president hasn't gone abroad, so I'm afraid I'll have to send it to you after I return. Hearing this, Madame Lavin hurriedly nodded. That's good. Let's leave it at that. Your case has been withdrawn and the restraining order has been lifted, so returning to China is no longer a problem. Then I'll sign it and send it to you as soon as I return. Lotus Sun said this feigned ignorance, but in fact, she already had a countermeasure in mind. For the time being, Lotus Sun still wasn't very clear about the intention behind asking for the signature of the leader of the Grey Church. But given her current realm, she could still test whether or not the notebook had been tampered with after she went back. If that didn't work, there was still Wang Ling. She could tell him about this matter and let him use his power of sight to see if there was anything fishy about it. At noon, everyone from number 60 High set out on their journey. Before they left, Whirlpool Imperial High School's freshman representative in Glio City, who was also the captain of the 6 child prodigies who had participated in the Variety Challenge along with number 60 High School this time, led the other 5 great magical powers to officially join the Grey Church, and announced the establishment of a Grey Church branch in Glio City. After Sun Island, this was the second cultivation country to have a Grey Church branch. Like Sun Island's Jiudao High School, Whirlpool Imperial High School in Glio City was also a famous high school in this cultivation country. It had always been number 1 in the national ranking list of cultivation high schools. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were deeply moved by the fact that these 2 ace high schools now had the shadow of number 60 High School. Wang Ling hadn't cared much about Lotus Sun's establishment of the Grey Church back then. He just felt that it wasn't a bad idea to have the Grey Church cover for him. Who knew that Lotus Sun could actually manage the Grey Church so well? Wang Ling was so shocked that he couldn't speak. This was the time when cultural exports were needed. In an era of cultural invasion from various major cultivation countries, promoting local cultivation culture overseas was truly something to be proud of. Back then, this speck of ash in an era had seemed very light and without much weight, but it had become an unintentional seed of cultural exports. Now, Wang Ling was a little curious about how far the Grey Church could develop in the end. Chapter 1834. The storm in Glio City gradually subsided. That Yuan Venerate of Mishio Nation had used Raven as a chess piece to achieve his initial goal, to deal a severe blow to Myoxi, the Heavenly Tao Alliance, the Heavenly Dog, and the other small forces, reshuffling the big forces and balancing them out. After this matter, the Tengus seemed to still be under the jurisdiction of the church, but the actual pope was Levis, and Levis had also become a member of the war sect. Thus, Tengu had essentially developed into an intelligence network under Battle's sex banner. But its internal structure was still very chaotic. Although those who could become Tengu were all elites, grenade-throwing senior Immortal thought that they still had to set stricter standards. At the very least, they had to pass a moral test first. Grenade-throwing senior Immortal couldn't allow some people to wear Tengu's cloak and do whatever they wanted in the intelligence business. Thus, these days, grenade-throwing senior Immortal had been thinking about a strict reset structure as well as a reshuffling plan specifically for Tengu. On the other side, Kyuko Ryoko had also returned to Huashio Nation with Qin Zong and Xiang Yi. They had been a lot of help in carrying out the mission in Glio City this time. At the same time, they had used the Kyuko family's power to deal with the major black and white bandits, and in the end, they had helped Lotus Sun clear her name in a very short period of time. Most importantly, the wonderful combination of Kwame Ryoko, Xiang Yi, and Qin Zong had not been fully understood by the public in Glio City. They were like a small knife hidden in the depths of a cotton-padded coat, lying dormant and waiting for a fatal strike. Lotus Sun had never liked to owe people favors, but this time, she knew that she owed a big one. Later, he would have to find a chance to properly thank Ryoko Kamiya. It was the morning self-study session on Tuesday, January 6th, the second day after Wang Ling and the others had returned to China. The class was a lot livelier than usual as a number of students from other classes came to join in on the fun and asked Wang Ling and the others about their participation in the variety show. Most people didn't know the truth, and only knew that Lotus Sun had taken a group of people to participate in Mishio Nation's variety show to win glory for the school. But there were many different opinions in the class as to what program they were participating in, and everyone had their own version of it. As a result, many people came to class early in the morning to ask Lotus Sun for confirmation. Lotus Sun, what kind of variety show are you participating in? Running around ripping off name tags? Or do you want to go on a trip with another high school group and get into a fight on the way? Judging from this reaction, it shouldn't be the ones mentioned above. Could it be that a group of people went to the wilderness to open up wastelands and build a home with local materials? No, that's not it. Lotus Sun was a little dazed by the barrage of questions. None of them? Don't tell me he's participating in some talent show. Someone suddenly exclaimed, a while ago, there was even a talent show that printed the QR code on the spirit milk boxes in order to help the older brothers and sisters vote for them. Some people just scanned the QR code without drinking the milk to support the person they liked. They poured out all the milk. What a waste. Of course, this kind of behavior is wrong, but the variety show we're participating in is similar to a secret room. It has nothing to do with this. Lotus Sun had no choice but to explain. Also, something went wrong during the recording, so this variety show probably won't be able to air. At that moment, the number 60 high students who had come to watch the show sighed one after another after hearing the truth. Sigh, what a pity. Jiang Bai from class 2 said, Fang Xing and Li Yuyue from our class also went, so I heard a little about it. It said that our number 60 high's opponent this time is the top high school in Mishio Nation. Maelstrom Imperial Palace. Oh. It's them. I've heard of this school. Maelstrom Imperial Palace has produced 6 new child prodigies this year. They're already at the Golden Core stage in grade 1, just like the teachers. They're terrifyingly strong. That's right. The key is that they don't eat much cultivation resources. I heard that they rely purely on hard work and talent to get there. This is a tradition in Maelstrom Imperial Palace in Glio City. Every day is a day where they break through their limits through completely enclosed pressure training. That's why a lot of people drop out midway because they can't take it anymore. But those who stay are the cream of the crop. A student who was in the know went on and on. They rely on this extreme cultivation method to cultivate all the way to grade 3. Only the students who make it to the end will Maelstrom Imperial Palace pool their resources to help them break through again. A lot of people have already been overwhelmed by this training method and dropped out of school, so the resources are relatively more concentrated. The students at the top who persevere to the end can eat more cultivation resources. Doesn't that mean they'll be even more heaven-defying when they cultivate to grade 3? I heard that in Maelstrom Imperial Palace, it's not like there haven't been students who almost reached the nascent soul stage in high school in the past. Given their life or death cultivation method, they'll be at the late golden core stage by grade 3 at the very least. Late golden core stage, that's a level that a lot of people can only reach in their 4th or 5th year in a 10-year cultivation university. So whether it's in Glio City or the other provinces and cities in Mishio Nation, Maelstrom Imperial Palace's combat strength is number 1. If we can compete with them, it'll actually be very helpful for us to study our opponents in other cultivation countries. Don't worry, there's plenty of time in the future. There'll always be a chance. At that moment, Super Chin suddenly spoke up. It was a pity for Super Chin that the variety show challenge had suddenly stopped recording this time. Deep down in the old Chin family's bones was the desire to compete with the strong. The stronger the opponent, the easier it was to stimulate one's potential. Super Chin knew that the people in Maelstrom Imperial Palace weren't weak, but if number 60 High joined forces, Super Chin felt that they still had a chance of winning. They might not be able to beat them one-on-one, but in terms of teamwork, number 60 High had been through so much, and their teamwork wouldn't be any weaker than that of any other high school. In fact, when Super Chin said, "There's plenty of time in the future," Wang Ling already had a feeling that it might not be too long before he met Maelstrom Imperial Palace again and again. During the lunch break that day, Wang Ling saw Lotus Sun writing the afternoon class schedule on the blackboard, and at the same time, her gaze kept sweeping over him. Wang Ling guessed that Lotus Sun most likely had something to say to him. He looked down at his textbook and pretended that nothing had happened. Sure enough, after Lotus Sun finished writing on the blackboard, she came looking for him. It was because of Madame Lavin's request for her autograph. Lotus Sun had already checked the notebook with the pure gold edge several times and hadn't found anything wrong with it, so she wanted to show it to Wang Ling. "Wang Ling, can you help me check it?" She looked at the youngster with a smile, and was just about to take the notebook out of her storage bag when a group of boys lurking in the corridor suddenly rushed over. "What? Which bold mascot wants to check classmate Lotus Sun's body? Damn it. So it's a body check. How can you cultivate?" Agitated, the group of boys swarmed over, and the originally quiet classroom immediately turned into chaos. Everyone scrambled to be the first to rush in, giving Wang Ling a fright. In a moment of desperation, Wang Ling had no choice but to sigh in his heart. He snapped his fingers to pause time, then put his hand gently on Lotus Sun's shoulder and moved her to the student union office. He then snapped his fingers again to undo the pause. Lotus Sun flushed red to her ears. "Sorry, Wang Ling. I didn't expect so many people to be eavesdropping. I think it's safer to come to the student union office next time." As she said this, she handed the notebook to Wang Ling. Wang Ling only glanced at it before returning it. Is there a problem?" Lotus Sun asked. "No," Wang Ling replied, his words as precious as gold. Lotus Sun nodded with a relieved expression. "That's good, it seems I was thinking too much." As soon as she said this, a girl from another class suddenly stumbled into the student union office and fell to the ground. Her face was red to the ears as she searched for her glasses on the floor and apologized. Sorry. President Lotus Sun, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear you say you were thinking about classmate Wang at all. I clearly said I was thinking too much, not that I was thinking about classmate Wang." Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand, feeling like her face was so hot it could roast meat. "Oh, I see, then it's fine." The girl found her glasses, then hurriedly put them on and got up from the floor. Looking at the girl's face, Lotus Sun finally asked, "I remember you're from regular class 1, classmate Chin Chin?" "Yes. It's me." The girl in glasses looked excited. "As expected of President Lotus Sun, you're very capable. I heard that the student union office can accept commissions, is that true?" "Commissions?" Lotus Sun and Wang Ling blinked at the same time. "That's right, I heard there's something called the Gray Sect. They can help people solve their problems or something." Lotus Sun was speechless. She was well aware that this, help people solve their problems, actually referred to the fact that the Gray Sect could help its followers, as well as students who had recommendation letters from their followers, solve the problem of memorizing books. After all, the Grace sect was essentially just a literary organization. What Lotus Sun had never expected was that the matter would actually spread like this. Just as she was about to refuse, this girl called Chin had an expectant expression on her face as she grabbed Lotus Sun's hand. "President. Can you let me finish my story? Just for a while. I heard that you can directly contact the leader of the Grace sect. He's a very sensitive person, maybe he can help me solve my problems. Of course, it's fine even if you don't accept my commission. But, I'm not a freeloader. Since I'm thick-skinned enough to ask for help, I naturally have to show some sincerity, I understand." This girl called Chin said, "Our school's canteen is actually outsourced to my father. If President Lotus Sun agrees to help me pass on the message, whether or not you accept it, you can choose whatever you want in the canteen for the year. Of course, if President Lotus Sun doesn't like this privilege, you can give it to someone else." "Then are there any new snacks in the school canteen this year?" Lotus Sun asked. "There aren't any new snacks, but there are new flavors, like potato chips, potato sticks, crispy noodle snacks, and so on," Chin said. Hearing this, Lotus Sun took a deep breath and stepped forward to take Chin's hand. "Sister, you've taken a wider path." Chin, "Ah?" "Lotus Sun, what I mean is, you can boldly tell me your dreams now." Chapter 1835. Chin knew that she didn't have much to offer. The students were still very poor, and her target was the young Miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. No matter how much money she offered, the other party probably wouldn't be interested, right? So before coming to the student union, she had specially asked the other students for their opinions. In the end, she had come to the conclusion that she could use the convenience store's privileges to entice her with snacks. When Super Chen had told Chin about this back then, she had found it inconceivable. How could the young Miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group be interested in the snacks in the convenience store? She hadn't expected it to be so effective. The first step had finally been taken. Because her request was very strange, the key was whether she could smoothly convey it to the head of the Grey Church to help her out. As she pondered this, Chin took out her phone, opened the photo album, and looked at the screenshot inside. It was a screenshot of a short video of a girl with glasses and a long ponytail. Lotus Sun took a closer look and then compared it to Chin's appearance. In the end, she revealed a suspicious expression. "This isn't you, right?" Chin became excited. "That's right. But don't you think she looks a lot like me?" Lotus Sun nodded. "Indeed. They're practically twins." Chin, "I suddenly discovered it on a short video platform a week ago. I was very surprised at the time. I never thought that there would be someone in the world who looks exactly like me." Lotus Sun nodded and immediately understood what Chin meant. "So you want to find her?" Chin, "I asked my parents if I had a younger sister or elder sister apart from me. In the end, they gave me a good scolding. They insisted that I was an only child." Lotus Sun sighed. "After all, the chances of finding someone who looks almost exactly like you and is a long-lost sister are really low. But I still want to find her." Chin didn't give up. "On one hand, I want to satisfy my curiosity, and on the other hand, I really have a feeling that this girl might be related to me. It looks like she's about the same age as you. So you think she might also be a student? So you want to use the Grey Church's influence in all the major schools to find this person, right?" At this point, Lotus Sun suddenly understood everything. However, there was still one thing that she couldn't figure out. She felt that Chin hadn't told her the whole story. "Student Chin, if you really want me to ask the Grey Church's leader for help, it's best if you tell him everything from the beginning to the end." Lotus Sun said, "I feel like you're hiding something." These words caused Chin to fall silent. After a moment of silence, she hesitantly opened a short video app and typed the name on the screenshot into the search box. Lotus Sun and Wang Ling saw this scene at the same time. When Chin pressed the confirm button, something strange happened. Immediately, a system notification popped up on the short video application. No such person found. Did they change their names? Wang Ling asked. If it's just a name change, the user's UID will not change, Chen Qin quickly replied. But even after I entered the UID, I still can't find her. So it's cancelled? Lotus Sun was also puzzled. I don't think it's cancelled. I've been observing her for several days. She mainly posts food videos on her short video app, and it's very regular. Every night at around 6:00, she posts a video of herself eating delicious food. There's no waste, and there's no inappropriate content. It definitely wasn't the platform that deleted her. The more Chen Qin spoke, the more solemn her expression became. The day before I couldn't find her account, she said that she would meet me at 6:00 tomorrow night. Although she doesn't have a lot of fans following her, how could a perfectly fine person just disappear like that? The whole thing did give off a very strange feeling. After hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun looked at each other for a while. Then, Lotus Sun nodded seriously and looked at Chen Qin. Then, Student Chen Qin, I understand your request. I'll try to get in touch with the leader of the Grey Church. If there are any new developments, I'll contact you in time. Thank you so much. No matter what happens in the end, I'll still pay you the commission fee, said Chen Qin. The commission fee wasn't a big problem. The main thing was that there was something very wrong with the incident itself. It wasn't just Lotus Sun, even Wang Ling's curiosity was piqued, and he sensed that something wasn't quite right. If it was as Chen Qin said, it would indeed be a little strange for such a living person to suddenly cancel her account. Furthermore, this person might have some sort of connection with Chen Qin, so it was normal for Chen Qin to have misgivings. It was like watching someone else in the same world suddenly vanish from the face of the earth. Perhaps it was an instinctive reaction, and it was only natural for her to be worried. But then again, this was the first time that Lotus Sun had taken the initiative to accept a real commission from the student party. Even she herself didn't know how things would develop in the end. Right now, she could only do her best. Jiudao and High School's Grey Church branch very quickly received an invitation from Lotus Sun for a joint investigation. Having an elite like Sparrow by the side of Jiudao and High School's head of Grey Church branch, Jiudao Sasaki, was a huge boost to the investigation. Lotus Sun's train of thought was very clear. She planned to have Sparrow start with that short video app and see what on earth was going on. In the end, less than 10 minutes later, Sparrow sent news. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. Because according to Sparrow's investigation, the short video app had already been hacked by a hacker. Furthermore, the other party's goal was very clear, to directly delete the account of the girl who looked very much like classmate Chen Qin. This was a deliberate act, but an ordinary person wouldn't be able to do anything about it in this situation, and could only interpret it as an official ban. But the truth was that this had nothing to do with the officials at all. Hacking into a short video app just to delete a girl's account? Lotus Sun frowned when she received the news, and felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. The only way to get to the bottom of the matter now was to find out where the girl was. But because the account information had already been deleted, there was no way to investigate it at all. But the only way to break through was the unknown hacker who had hacked into the short video app. Can I entrust this to Brother Wang Ming? At that moment, Lotus Sun looked at Wang Ling. Wang Ling nodded. He and Lotus Sun were thinking the same thing. Chapter 1836. This was Wang Ling's first time encountering a commission from a student. In the past, he had always avoided it because he felt that it would cause him trouble, and to a certain extent, risked exposing his true strength. But now, Wang Ling really felt that he had changed. Perhaps it was because he had experienced too many earth-shattering events, but when it came to this kind of small commission, he felt indifferent. As for exposing his strength, in any case, Lotus Sun now knew his situation and would cover for him, so he didn't have to worry too much. Of course, the most important thing was that Wang Ling realized that he wasn't a cold-blooded person. When he wore the Tao Talisman seal, his emotions didn't fluctuate much. When he was in primary and middle school, he had often been scolded for being a cold-blooded animal, but life in high school seemed to be different. He realized that he sometimes liked to meddle in other people's business. When he accepted this commission with Lotus Sun, Wang Ling was well aware that it definitely wasn't because of the commission fee the other party had promised. Did he look like someone who wouldn't budge at the mention of crispy noodle snacks? Although Wang Ling didn't know why he had become so warm-hearted, he was in a very good mood. Because this was probably the closest he had ever been to a normal person. In the afternoon, it was Old Antique's theory of history class, which specifically mentioned the conversion between spirit stones and immortal gold. Holding a piece of chalk, Old Antique wrote a long series of conversion formulas on the blackboard, leaving everyone speechless. This was supposed to be Old Pan's job in the Tao Talisman's class, but in the end, Old Antique had snatched it away. On the other hand, Old Antique's cultivation knowledge was indeed very extensive. In Wang Ling's view, Old Antique wasn't just good at teaching theory of history, he was also competent in other subjects. He was a true jack of all trades. I saw the formulas in the paper in middle school. It's not a test now, but you can take note of them if you're interested. After writing, Old Antique habitually wiped his chalk-covered hands with a rag on the table, and then continued to say, there are two ways to extract spirit stones. One is to collect spirit ore and process it with a machine, and the other is to create spirit stones by absorbing spirit chi from the natural world and injecting it into a machine. The created spirit stones can then be combined with some other materials and transformed into the more valuable immortal gold. The former is more efficient, but the natural spirit ores are often limited. If they are overexploited, sooner or later, there will be a situation where there are no ores to use. As for the artificial input of spirit stones, although it is inexhaustible, the efficiency is very low. On the other hand, if one were to engage in this work for a long time, it may have a certain impact on one's cultivation foundation, or even damage one's spirit root. Actually, Wang Ling had heard this from grenade-throwing senior Immortal before. Previously, when the Heavenly Hound was still under the control of the Sacred Race, the Sacred Race had planned to have the Heavenly Hound launch a spirit stone trade war against the Huaguo Water Curtain Group. In the end, the Heavenly Hound was swallowed up by the Battle sect before they could do so. Back then, Heavenly Dog had planned to empty the spirit stone market and cause Huaguo Water Curtain Group and Battle sect to suffer losses for no reason. Wang Ling himself had also been prepared to save the market. It was nothing more than artificially created spirit stones. With his output power, if he were to continue producing spirit stones for a day, he might just become the richest man in the world. At this time, the class was talking about the problem of artificial input of spiritual energy to create spirit stones that could harm the body. Wang Ling wasn't worried about this at all. Although his output power was high, it wouldn't have any impact on the body. There wouldn't be a problem with regular input of spirit energy into spirit stones. As long as one didn't work continuously or was fatigued, there wouldn't be any impact. What he was worried about was that some black-hearted factories would continue to exploit the labor force in order to make money. Doesn't the country prohibit it? Someone raised his hand and asked curiously. There are clear rules on working hours for artificial spirit stones. All cultivators who are employed to input spirit energy into machines can't work more than 5 hours a day, and have to change shifts when the 5 hours are up, Old Antique said. This is a hard and fast rule for all regular spirit stone processing plants. If they don't follow this standard, once the regulatory authorities find out, the company and the processing plant involved will be fined up to 30 times the price. Teacher, you said regular, but are there any that aren't? Super Chin asked at that moment. The market is so big, it's inevitable that there will be a few fish that slip through the net. After all, there's a saying, the most profitable projects are in the cultivation criminal law. For the sake of profit, people sometimes take risks out of desperation and do things that they clearly know are against the rules, but they still have to bite the bullet and do it. All parties have been cracking down on illegal factories over the years, and it's been very effective. Saying this, Old Antique couldn't help sighing. Come to think of it, a few days ago, I saw a satirical cartoon drawn by a very famous CG cartoonist online, specifically targeting those black-hearted factories. Wu Hapisho? That's right, that's him. Old Antique nodded. But very quickly, this CG cartoon was censored. I don't know if it poked someone's sore spot or not. What on earth did teacher Wu Hapisho draw? This is a short cartoon about a black-hearted factory boss who uses technical means to create a large number of cloned cultivators to continuously produce spirit stones for himself. Old Antique said with a reminiscing expression, those poor cloned cultivators are constantly squeezed until their bodies are overdrawn. At that time, the black-hearted boss will unhesitatingly abandon them. Their bodies will be broken down and sent back to the furnace to be rebuilt as new clones. Then, they will continue to work for the black-hearted boss, forming a cycle. After the story was told, everyone in the class shuddered at the same time. There was no doubt that this was a short cartoon with a slightly thrilling, terrifying and suspenseful flavor. Just listening to it made people shudder. As expected of teacher Wu Hapisho, someone in class exclaimed in admiration. Usually, when everyone went to school, they would be faced with homework when they got home. It was fine on weekends, but on a normal working day, almost no one would pay much attention to what was happening online. If it was posted and then deleted, it wouldn't attract much attention. Everyone in class sank into discussion at Old Antique's words. But Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's expressions were clearly a little gloomy. Wang Ling always had a very strange feeling about Old Antique. Every time he felt that Old Antique was deliberately hinting at something in class, he also felt that it was just some kind of strange coincidence. Clones, and that short video blogger who looked exactly like classmate Chin Chin, but had disappeared into thin air. Wang Ling had a hunch that there might be some kind of connection between the two. Set a small goal first, like 1 second. Remember, bookseller's house. Chapter 1837. It was still the Cultivation Training Center. After school that day, Lotus Sun immediately put on the nine-tailed fox mask, changed into traditional Chinese clothes, and rushed over. She had asked Jiang Yingying to train here. The whole training session took about an hour, and she had to meet up with Wang Ling and Chin Chin right after that. She had wanted to refuse at first. But she had already stood Jiang Yingying up several times because she had gone abroad a few days ago. If she didn't come today, she was worried that Jiang Yingying would become suspicious. Pretty sister. Jiang Yingying wasn't idle either. She arrived at the training center 10 or so minutes ahead of Lotus Sun, and didn't waste a single minute as she directly started to wield the big sword according to Lotus Sun's instructions. When Lotus Sun arrived, Jiang Yingying greeted her with a smile on her face, beads of sweat rolling down her cheeks. You're working hard. Then let's hurry up and train, Lotus Sun said. Okay. After practicing for 10 or so minutes, Jiang Yingying suddenly asked, Pretty sister, what's wrong? Why do I feel like you're a little distracted today? Sorry, a little. Lotus Sun admitted bluntly. Even a disciple could see that her Shifu was absent-minded, especially when she was wearing a mask. This kind of absent-mindedness was a little too obvious. The reason for her absent-mindedness was very simple. Maybe it was because of Chin Chin, but more than that, it was because of Wang Ling. She actually hadn't expected Wang Ling to be willing to directly intervene in this matter and participate in the First Grey Church mission with her. He had thought that Wang Ling would definitely find this matter very boring and ignore it. In the end, this blockhead didn't play by the rules at all. Lotus Sun's heart was a little flustered. Because she wasn't very sure if going on a mission together was considered having a good impression of her. Yingying, do you remember what I mentioned to you last time? I know, that's senior brother's boyfriend? Jiang Yingying laughed. I knew that pretty sister's absent-mindedness today probably had something to do with him. Lotus Sun hesitated, then said, It's like this, I'm going on a mission with him. The point is that he has never been interested in such a mission before. Then isn't this progress? You think it's progress? I think so. Jiang Yingying said, If I don't have any feelings for you, how could I go on a mission with you? There's a commission fee, and it's a commission fee that he can't refuse. Hey, so it turns out that the cultivators of the upper echelons are also obsessed with money? No matter what, Sister Rongrong, I think this is a great opportunity. At the very least, you can use this mission to test the waters. But I'm afraid I'll mess it up. I don't think so. If this senior brother is still willing to carry out the mission with you when you're acting rashly, doesn't that prove that he's interested in you? All of a sudden, Lotus Sun came to a realization. Jiang Yingying didn't seem to have a lot of experience in love. Instead, she was purely a naive girl who had read too many romantic dramas and mangas. Nowadays, the setting of a rash female lead isn't very likable. And this was also one of the reasons why so many girls like to watch TV shows where beautiful men and beautiful men appreciated each other. Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. What everyone wanted to see wasn't the plot of a radiant male lead rescuing a naive and sweet Mary Sue who acted rashly. What they wanted to see was a sweet interaction between a normal female lead and a normal male lead who wouldn't cause trouble. In short, after talking with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun understood one thing. That was that Jiang Yingying's love experience didn't have any substantial reference value. She could even reverse the situation based on Jiang Yingying's experience. In class, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were inspired by what old antique had hinted at. Now that they had been inspired, the next step was to verify their ideas. First of all, it was impossible for a living person to disappear for no reason. If that video blogger had really run into danger, Wang Ling felt that there would definitely be some clues left behind. In the modern cultivation world, there were too many ways to uncover the truth. Even if Wang Ling didn't use his strange spells, the cultivation police would still be able to find a flaw with their existing technology. Corpse-dissolving water, which had once been popular in the cultivation world, actually also existed now. Pouring a drop of it on a corpse after a murder would cause it to completely evaporate in a very short period of time, leaving no trace behind. In troubled times, this method had once been a must-have magic weapon for major forces to secretly compete with each other. However, this miraculous liquid that could destroy corpses and leave no traces behind could now be detected by modern cultivation techniques. For example, the elemental camera. After a cultivator died, the spirit root in their body would often leave traces of the elements in the air that corresponded to the spirit root. By using the elemental camera to capture a possible crime scene, one could see the outline of a corpse outlined by natural elements. Of course, it would be even more convenient for Wang Ling to go over. He didn't need a camera, he could do it with the king's eye. The gray and white cafe on Student Street near number 60 High School had already become a gathering point for Grey Church disciples. After her training with Jiang Yingying, Lotus Sun had immediately rushed over. At that moment, Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been waiting in the cafe for a long time. On the way over, Lotus Sun had given herself a Grey Church leader's decree, which was mainly for Chen Qin to read. It clearly stated that the leader of the Grey Church was already aware of this matter, and had given full authority to Lotus Sun, the head of the Grey Church branch at number 60 High School, as well as Grey Church disciple Wang Ling, to handle the matter. It was quite amazing that the Grey Church had been founded in the first place because of the essay called Substitute, which Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had written for Wang Ling at the Nine Dragon Mountain Conclave, and because of the golden phrase, a speck of ash in the age. In the essay, Wang Ling had been packaged as a composition genius. But the truth was that most of the disciples who joined the Grey Church thought that the essay had been written by the leader of the Grey Church. Naturally, Wang Ling's tampering with most people's memories in order to rationalize everything was part of this. Now that he was just a Grey Church disciple, this was completely reasonable. After all, he was just a composition writer. What the hell did the Grey Church know? Student Lotus Sun, you're finally here. Chen Qin and Wang Ling had already been sitting in the cafe's private room for a long time. As soon as Lotus Sun arrived, she looked like she was about to cry, as if she had seen a life-saving straw. What's wrong? Lotus Sun was startled. Student Wang Ling and I have been sitting here for a long time, but he actually hasn't said a word. Classmate Chen Qin looked worried. I suspect that classmate Wang Ling is broken. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun. Chapter 1838. Wang Ling had never thought that his silent contemplation would actually cast such a huge psychological shadow on Qin. Usually, when Wang Ling was thinking carefully about something, he would enter a meditative state like just now. Even if his eyes were open, everything in front of him would temporarily turn into nothingness, like a cloud of smoke and fog that constantly changed in front of his eyes as his thoughts ran through his mind, thus giving him certain hints. His hearing would also be isolated to eliminate all external disturbances, and it could be said that he was truly undistracted. As for his body, it would automatically enter a state of being seized by the system. At that time, his body would automatically identify malicious intent around him and enter a 100% evasion mode, causing all attacks to miss and directly entering a state of ineffectiveness. Wang Ling had a premonition that this matter was very complicated, so he had activated this meditative mode to think about it. Generally speaking, it was only the final exams that qualified him to use this ability. It was just that Wang Ling had overlooked one thing, and that was that Qin was still here and had been frightened by his mode. "Sorry," Wang Ling said. He rarely took the initiative to apologize to anyone, and this was his first time doing so. When he saw Qin's expression relax again, Wang Ling somehow felt that he was a little closer to being a normal person. "Classmate Qin, don't be too afraid. When Wang Ling is thinking, he's like this." "Well, actually, I'm not afraid. I'm just curious." "Curious? Why is a person who is as focused as an old monk in meditation when he's thinking about something, why does he score average in every exam?" Super Qin keeps telling me that he suspects Wang Ling is deliberately keeping his scores down. Wang Ling, hearing this, Lotus Sun laughed and hurriedly changed the subject. "But we're not here to talk about exams today. You said earlier that you've sorted out new clues?" "Yes." As Qin spoke, she took out a stack of washed photos from her pink school bag. In addition to the cell phone screenshots that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had already seen, they found that among the clues provided this time were some photos of the video blogger's daily life. "Where did you get these photos?" Lotus Sun asked curiously. "These are the photos she posted on other social media platforms before the video was deleted. I found them through her ID. But it seems that she's already logged out of other social media platforms." "I don't know if she was logged out," Qin said. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" "Because I remembered wrongly. These photos were in another phone. Later, I used the cloud drive function of the phone I'm using now to find them." Wang Ling looked through each photo carefully, and finally fixed his eyes on one. It was a photo of the vlogger and a man in a Taoist costume. Unfortunately, the face of the Taoist was covered with a thick layer of mosaic. Seeing that Wang Ling was particularly concerned about this photo, Lotus Sun asked tacitly, "Do you remember when this photo was released?" "I remember I saved it half a month ago." "But she should have posted the photos on the internet much earlier. Also, this is the only photo she took with someone on that platform," Qin said. In other words, the Taoist priest in the photo might be the last person to see her. After obtaining a new lead from Qin, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun immediately set out on the next step of their operation. Wang Ling took Lotus Sun to Line 19, the terminus of the subway at Qingshan Lake. It was on the outskirts of the city, and there were almost no people living there. There were only a few people camping there on weekends, and almost no one could be seen on weekdays. Seeing that there was no one in the carriage, Lotus Sun asked cautiously, "Wang Ling, you should be able to restore the mosaic in the photo, right?" Wang Ling nodded, then handed over the photo in his hand. Lotus Sun was stunned to find that Wang Ling had actually removed the mosaic. Standing next to the vlogger who looked very much like Qin was a female Taoist priest. She didn't look very old, and looked to be about the age of a high school student. She wore a long white robe, and her beautiful black hair was coiled up with a purple Taoist hairpin. She held a pink horsetail whisk in her hand and wore cute straw sandals. Lotus Sun was flabbergasted. She was clearly such a cute girl, but she was actually a female Taoist priest? If this girl was in a proper high school, she felt that she would definitely be the dream girl of many boys. But on the other hand, she breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Good, good, she was a female Taoist priest. Otherwise, she would have had more strange competitors. But having said that, there was one thing that astonished Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling was actually able to tell which Taoist temple this cute little female Taoist priest came from just by looking at the photo. That was a little too inconceivable. Nowadays, Taoist temples mostly wore plain clothes like cyan, white or black, and they didn't have any special logos on them. There were more than 100,000 Taoist temples of all sizes in the country, and each one had a different name. Apart from the fact that most Taoist temples were located on mountains, there didn't seem to be much in common. She felt that Wang Ling had probably deduced this female Taoist priest's identity before. Who would have thought that when they arrived at the entrance of the Taoist temple, when a child who looked to be only 13 or 14 years old but was dressed in Taoist robes saw Wang Ling, a stunned expression appeared on his face. He hurriedly put down his broom and ran into the Taoist temple, shouting, "It's Scholar Wang. Scholar Wang is here. Senior Sister Yu Qing." Lotus Sun's expression froze slightly at this sudden announcement, and only after a moment of daze did she see the Taoist temple's plaque clearly. The 3 words, Wind and Thunder Manor, were written on it. This was a Taoist temple that Lotus Sun had never heard of before. She knew about Qingshan Lake, but she had never known that there was such a Taoist temple on a mountain about 5 kilometers away from it. A trace of doubt flitted across her mind. Wang Ling had found his way here just by looking at the photo. Lotus Sun had thought that this was the result of a deduction, but judging from the little Taoist priest's reaction just now, she suddenly felt that perhaps Wang Ling and this remote little Taoist temple had some kind of strange connection. No way, it couldn't be that coincidental, right? Her heart was pounding. At that moment, the petite and adorable female Taoist priest from the photo walked out of the Taoist temple with a smile on her face, her pink horsetail whisk in her straw sandals. "Long time no see, Scholar Wang." She took the initiative to step forward and looked at Wang Ling's face without any hesitation. There seemed to be some ambiguity in her eyes. After a long while, she turned her gaze to Lotus Sun on the side, then flung the horsetail whisk aside and stretched out her hand. "Hello, female Taoist priest, I am Yu Qing, the eldest senior sister of Wind and Thunder Taoist Temple." Chapter 1839. Come to think of it, Wang Ling and Yu Qing's ill-fated relationship had started a long, long time ago. Yu Qing had been Wang Ling's kindergarten classmate. That was something that had happened a long time ago. When Wang Ling was a child, his parents always liked to jokingly ask him how many husbands and wives he had in kindergarten. Even during his kindergarten years, he couldn't avoid this habit. Yu Qing had been one of the targets of Father Wang, Mother Wang, and Grandfather Wang's jokes. When they were in primary school, Yu Qing even kept in touch with Wang Ling, and sometimes even took the initiative to visit the Wang family's small villa. Later, when Father and Mother Wang heard that Yu Qing had moved to another city, the relationship between the two families had become strained. It wasn't until the year Wang Ling entered high school that he heard about Yu Qing's recent situation from a junior high classmate. It was said that Yu Qing had made a bold decision to become a Taoist priest. Wang Ling was clearly a little dumbfounded when he heard this news. He knew that Yu Qing's brain had always been abnormal, but he hadn't expected it to be this abnormal. But very quickly, Wang Ling regained his composure. But Yu Qing didn't know much about Wang Ling himself, and didn't know that he had a heaven-defying ability. It was just that her intuition told her that compared with ordinary cultivators, Wang Ling was different. Ever since she was a child, she had felt that Wang Ling was particularly attractive to her. After coming to Wind Thunder Manor and becoming the eldest senior sister, she had once met Wang Ling as a female Taoist priest. For example, the year Wang Ling's grandmother had passed away, it had been Yu Qing who had presided over his grandmother's Dharma conference. At that time, she hadn't been as mature as she was now, and her childish face was still as cute as a porcelain doll's. But when she presided over the Dharma conference, her little face was tense and unusually serious. It was obvious that Yu Qing was a female Taoist priest with great professional ability. After entering the Taoist hall, Yu Qing led Wang Ling and Lotus Sun to sit down on a prayer mat. This used to be Wind Thunder Manor's lecture hall. Peachwood tables were neatly arranged in front of the hall, and each table had a plain prayer mat in front of it. At the very front of the main hall were an offering table and an incense burner, as well as a huge 8 trigrams disc hanging on the wall. The prayer mat in front of the offering table looked slightly bigger than the prayer mat used by ordinary disciples, and it was also black and white in color. Usually, the Wind Thunder Manor's Manor Lord and Yu Yuaching would preach here. Of course, the Wind Thunder Manor Lord was a lazy person. It was mainly Yu Yuaching who preached in the lecture hall as the eldest senior sister. Compared to the other Taoist temples, the Wind Thunder Manor's specialty was that the people here were all young Taoist priests. After pouring tea for the two of them, Yu Yuaching listened to Lotus Sun's tireless speech. She didn't answer the question right away. Instead, she smiled at Lotus Sun and whispered into her ear, perhaps this is a little rude, but I'm very curious. What kind of relationship do you have with Scholar Wang? Lotus Sun's face immediately burned. We're just classmates. Oh, I see. Yu Yuaching had a look of realization, and immediately became happy. From what I remember, Master Wang almost never talks to girls. The probability of them traveling together is very low. Lotus Sun's cheeks beaded with sweat as she probed, so Taoists are also interested in worldly matters. I'm just a Taoist priest, not a monk. Taoists are also divided into those who are particular and those who aren't, and there aren't many restrictions when it comes to relationships. Those who are particular can get married after finding their true love, Yu Yuaching said with a smile. Get married, of course I can get married. I just need to renounce asceticism. I became a Taoist precisely because I was waiting for Wang Ling. When he comes around, I can renounce asceticism at any time. Yu Yuaching spoke bluntly in front of Lotus Sun, and her overflowing confidence instantly gave Lotus Sun a great sense of crisis. On the other side, Wang Ling choked at Yu Yuaching's words. He was sure that Yu Yuaching had said this on purpose. He wasn't saying this for Lotus Sun, but for himself. When he was very young, he remembered that Yu Yuaching liked to tease him more than other girls. In the eyes of others, he was clearly regarded as a silent monster and isolated, but in the end, Yu Yuaching still persisted in making all kinds of jokes with him. The speaker had no intention, but the listener had a heart. These words instantly raised Lotus Sun's vigilance, which she had let down before entering the Taoist temple. As expected. She had been thinking too much. It turned out that female Taoists were the most dangerous. She had pretended to be a Taoist, but it turned out that she was just playing hard to get. Dangerous. Lotus Sun felt that this was a huge crisis. It was completely different from when she had faced Jiang Yingying. She had been sure that Jiang Yingying was no match for her, so she had been very calm all this time. But when it came to Yu Yuaching, she knew nothing, and didn't know what to do. As for the story between Yu Yuaching and Wang Ling, Lotus Sun had no idea at all. She was really very curious as to what on earth had happened between the two of them. While Lotus Sun's imagination was running wild, Yu Yuaching flicked the pink horsetail whisk in her hand and abruptly changed the subject. In Lotus Sun's view, this was a very clever move. She didn't have any chance to ask about her relationship with Wang Ling at all. She looked at the photo for a moment, then nodded and said, "The female Buddhist you mentioned did indeed come to Wind Thunder Manor a while ago to ask me for divination. And because her divination was very strange, I remember it very clearly." Strange divination? Lotus Sun asked. Yes, a very strange divination. Yu Yuaching nodded and said, "Logically speaking, this is a client secret, and I shouldn't have told you. But looking at it now, this female Buddhist might be in danger, so let's handle this special case." She looked at Lotus Sun and Wang Ling with a deadpan expression and said, "She wanted me to tell a divination about her job interview." Strange, right? She's clearly a girl about our age, but at such a young age, she abandoned her studies to go to work. At this age, the only way out is to study, and studying is more important than anything else. Rather than finding a place to work. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun suddenly felt that Yu Yuaching wasn't qualified to say this. But Yu Yuaching didn't seem to sense anything wrong with what she had said, and continued, "By the way, my divination wasn't very good. So I advised her not to go to work, even if she passed the interview. At that moment, Yu Yuqing sighed. It seems that she thought I was too young, and didn't believe me at all. So she probably went to that unit, and something happened to her. Your divination is so accurate? Lotus-san was stunned. Of course. Yu Yuqing smiled and took out a palm-sized turtle shell from the storage bag in her Taoist robe. Scholar Wang gave this to me when I was very young. It contains proof of our love, so the divination is definitely accurate. Wang Ling. Chapter 1840. This was a little turtle shell that had been transformed by Wang Ling's version 1.0 enchantment spell. Father and Mother Wang had forced him to give it to Yu Yuqing when she had been the closest to the Wang family back then. Back then, Wang Ling had been very afraid of Yu Yuqing's particular fondness for pestering him, so he had given her the turtle shell for a very simple purpose. He wanted Yu Yuqing to use it to divine her marriage fate, so that she could find a good husband in the future. Wang Ling had to admit that although he had been very young back then, he had indeed thought a little too much. Yu Yuqing obviously hadn't used this turtle shell to divine her marriage fate, but had used it to directly embark on the path of a female Taoist, speaking of which, Wang Ling sighed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call this fated relationship an ill-fated one. But then again, the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa, such as Lord Ma, had already undergone version 3.0 of the latest enchantment spell. Wang Ling never thought that this version 1.0 enchantment turtle shell would actually be able to divine so accurately. According to Yu Yuqing herself, the turtle shell could predict what would happen in the next 6 months. If the timeline was closer, it would be more detailed, and the further away it was, the fuzzier it would be. So far, the most accurate thing it could do was predict the good or bad luck of an event. Who knew if she was trying to show off her divination ability, but Yu Yuqing began to shake the turtle shell in front of Lotus-san with a serious expression. After all the copper coins in the turtle shell had been shaken out, Yu Yuqing stared at them carefully and began to speak tirelessly. Today, brothers and sisters who leave a message in this chapter will be lucky. Tomorrow, that shameless author Ku Xian will update once again. He delays every day. I've never seen this before. 4 months from now, around 520, a female celebrity from Sun Island with the surname Xin Yuan will announce her marriage. The internet will suffer the loss of a wife. Yu Yuqing spoke very seriously. In one divination, she had directly said 3 things that would happen today, tomorrow, and even further into the future, which left Lotus-san gasping in amazement. No wonder when she and Wang Ling had come here, they had seen all kinds of men and women visiting Wind Thunder Manor to worship the 3 pure ones. Most of them came to visit after hearing that Yu Yuqing's divination was accurate. However, Yu Yuqing would usually tell her own fortune before she told someone else's fortune. She would only agree to tell her fortune based on the content of the request. Not everyone's requests would be accepted. There were many old-looking gray-robed Taoists in the Wind Thunder Manor. In fact, these gray-robed Taoists were cultivators who had come from all over the country. They were here to perform a divination for Yu Yuqing and then fulfill her wish. However, the Taoist temple was very small, and there were only 6 places for cultivation. Therefore, those who came to fulfill their wishes needed to make an appointment in advance. Lotus-san glanced at the appointment list. The longest appointment for those who had come to fulfill their wishes was already 7 months later. It's indeed very popular. Lotus-san muttered to herself. The more Yu Yuqing spoke, the more she felt a sense of crisis. Because she had never known that before Wang Ling had given her something, he had taken the initiative to give something to another girl. Moreover, Lotus-san didn't need to think to know that this little turtle shell had been specially enchanted. In other words, Wang Ling probably, had indeed liked Yu Yuqing before. For a moment, her heart was in a whirl. She clearly knew that now wasn't the time to think about these things, but once her emotions got tangled up, she couldn't care less. In the first round, Lotus-san had to admit that she had lost. She couldn't see through Yu Yuqing. This was the first time she had ever felt this way. Yu Yuqing, on the other hand, was completely unperturbed as she said those easily misunderstood words in a joking manner. Back to business. She flipped through the Daoist temple's client directory and directly showed Wang Ling and Lotus Sun the records of all the good men and women she had visited. She directly flipped through the directory to a record from more than half a month ago. This is the female scholar you're looking for. The name written on it was Li Xian. Her address is at the back. Our Daoist temple delivers small pendants to visiting scholars every month. This is actually the master's way of winning over the scholars. At the same time, the pendants also have our Wind Thunder Manor's name on them, which is also a form of advertisement. Lotus Sun tried hard to compose herself as she asked, "Is she called Li Xian? Is it a fake name?" "I don't think so. Because before each divination, I always make it clear that you have to use your real name, otherwise the results won't be accurate." "So that's how it is. Okay, thank you, Daoist you." Lotus Sun nodded and got up. At that moment, Yu Yuqing grabbed Lotus Sun's arm. Wait, you're leaving just like that?" We've already seen the address. "We're going to look for her there," said Lotus Sunday. "Don't worry, I'll go with you." Yu Yuqing smiled. Lotus Sun was stunned. "But, will it be okay without Daoist you in the Daoist temple?" "It's not a big deal. At worst, I won't do any divination when I'm not around. Besides, the master will be here. If you need anything, you can look for him." Yu Yuqing narrowed her eyes and smiled cutely. "Wang Ling, oh, no, Scholar Wang. It's not easy for him to take the initiative to look for me, so I have to help." To be honest, Lotus Sun actually didn't really want to take Yu Yuqing with her. But after all, it was Yu Yuqing who had provided the information on that vlogger. If she refused to, obviously, it would make her look bad. Helpless, Lotus Sun could only sigh silently in her heart and agree to Yu Yuqing's request. Before they left the Daoist temple, a young Daoist brought Yu Yuqing a brand new pink horsetail whisk. It was a dark pink horsetail whisk. Apart from the difference in color, there didn't seem to be anything special about it. Seeing Yu Yuqing replace the horsetail whisk, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking curiously, "What's the matter?" "Nothing, it's just that I think this trip might be dangerous. It's not easy for us to go down the mountain. Of course, we have to be prepared." Yu Yuqing smiled. "What's the saying? The more you use a weapon, the more ruthless it is." Wang Ling and Lotus Sun, although she wasn't very old, she was already at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was about to step into the golden core stage. In terms of cultivation aptitude, Lotus Sun felt that Yu Yuqing was very similar to herself, and even more talented. After confirming that Yu Yuqing had joined the team, Lotus Sun directly called a taxi with her phone at the foot of the mountain. Seeing this, Yu Yuqing was startled. Call a taxi here? Do you know how expensive it is to take a taxi there?" Lotus Sun smiled awkwardly. "Then, should we go on a sword? Flying a sword isn't challenging at all. Since we have to cultivate at the same time, the first choice is naturally a bicycle. Our Daoist temple has a one-car garage at the foot of the mountain. The three of us can ride there." Yu Yuqing smiled kindly. Lotus Sun had no choice but to agree. As for Wang Ling sandwiched between the two women, he really didn't know what to do. But the moment they saw the bicycle, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun regretted not turning down Yu Yuqing's request earlier. Because this was a long bicycle that could seat 3 people. Chapter 1841. Looking at this ivory 3-person bicycle in front of them, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun fell into deep thought at the same time. It was really hard for Wang Ling to imagine what it would be like to ride this bicycle through the streets. Would he really not be taken for a lunatic? Furthermore, if he was sandwiched between 2 girls, what kind of expression would passers-by look at him? He clearly wasn't the Sea King. Would he be taken for one? If some nosy person took a photo and posted it online, wouldn't he be instantly killed? After all, some news media nowadays couldn't even directly publish news about important academicians without verifying it first, which was really unprofessional behavior. It seriously lowered the credibility of the domestic media. The most important thing was that after publishing it, if they found out that there was something wrong with the report, they would directly delete it and pretend that nothing had happened, without apologizing. This was simply too shameless. A great man had once said that the current news industry still had to learn more. After all, they were too young and needed to improve their knowledge, otherwise they would have to take responsibility if there were any deviations in their reports in the future. Don't spend all day thinking about making big news. Wang Ling felt that this lecture wasn't wrong at all. So, being a little cautious was always the right thing to do. Don't be fooled by how ordinary this bicycle looks, it's actually very agile. I've given it the nickname Little White Dragon. Yu Yuqing smiled. Of course, I know you might not be used to it, so I prepared a helmet for you in advance. As she said this, she took out the motorcycle helmet in an exceptionally considerate manner. Yu Yuqing was well aware of Wang Ling's sociopathic personality. He definitely wouldn't be used to riding this bicycle around so openly. As long as there was a suitable cover, a motorcycle helmet was a very good choice, and it could also ensure safety. After all, when the bicycle in the cultivation world was in operation, how fast it could be ridden depended on the realm of the rider. Yu Yuqing estimated their strength. They were all at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and with the three of them riding together, Little White Dragon could directly exceed 600 kilometers per hour. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun both sweated. Of course, they also knew about the invisible rule of riding a bicycle based on one's realm, so it was hard for them to imagine what it would be like for Wang Ling to ride a bicycle. Surpassing the speed of light was just a basic operation. How many times faster was the problem? Wang Ling took the motorcycle helmet and couldn't help sighing in his heart. They hadn't seen each other in years, but Yu Yuqing's way of thinking was still as novel as ever. Luckily, he was wearing a motorcycle helmet, so he didn't feel so embarrassed. Before he got on the car, he shook his finger and used the lowest level enchantment spell on the Little White Dragon so that it wouldn't directly disintegrate while it was moving at high speed. Then he put on his helmet and headed straight for the front of the bike. Just in case, he intended to take control of the bike himself. But Yu Yuqing saw through him and stopped him. Wait, Wang Ling. Do you know the way? Why don't I do it? Wang Ling, of course he knew the way. If Yu Yuqing hadn't insisted on following them, he might have found a remote corner and teleported there with Lotus Sunday. Seeing that Yu Yuqing was putting him in a difficult position, Lotus Sun immediately stepped forward to smooth things over. How about I do it? I've been there before, and I know the way. Are you sure? Yu Yuqing asked again. And I'll sit at the front. Lotus Sun nodded. Then Wang Ling will sit second, and I'll sit at the back. They finished their discussion calmly. Just as Lotus Sun was about to sit at the front of the bike, she suddenly realized a very serious problem. Lotus Sun suddenly realized that she had fallen into Yu Yuqing's trap. First of all, Wang Ling, who was sitting second, definitely wouldn't hold her waist, then Yu Yuqing, who was sitting third. It was very likely that she would directly hold Wang Ling's waist. And then, she would call him, in an extremely intimate manner. That intense image almost instantly filled Lotus Sun's mind. Good heavens, it turned out that Taoist Yu had been waiting for her here. No. She absolutely couldn't let Yu Yuqing have her way. So before she got on the car, she changed her mind again. Taoist Yu, there's a part of the road that I don't remember very clearly. How about you sit second? It'll be easier for you to show me the way. Sure, no problem. To Lotus Sun's surprise, Yu Yuqing actually agreed happily without the slightest hint of regret on her face. In that instant, Lotus Sun's heart was moved. She felt that maybe she was simply overthinking things, and shouldn't have been so petty, but sometimes, she still felt that being a little more cautious was always the right thing to do. Just like that, a Taoist priest and two Foundation Establishment high school students from a cultivation high school officially rode Little White Dragon on their way to find that vlogger called Li Xian. On the road, Wang Ling could feel a strong sense of shame through his motorcycle helmet. It was as if the gazes of the people around him could penetrate the helmet and land on him, making his forehead sweat profusely. He could only bury his head in pedaling to complete his mission. After many twists and turns, they finally arrived at the address they had registered at the Taoist temple at about 7:30 in the evening. It was an apartment. When the three of them reached the ground floor, the apartment manager immediately opened the door with a vigilant look in his eyes. "Who are you looking for?" "We're looking for a resident called Li Xian. Can you let us in?" Lotus Sun asked. "You don't live in this apartment, do you?" "I've never seen you before." "Unless she comes down to pick you up, I can't let you in," the apartment manager said strictly. And recently, some lawbreakers like to dress up as pitiful student groups and sneak into the apartment to steal things. "Of course, I'm not suspecting you. It's just that people have been in a state of panic recently, and it's our duty." "Understood." Lotus Sun nodded. At that moment, the apartment manager said, "By the way, if you can find the landlord of this apartment and he gives you permission, I can let you in. I'm just a worker, I really can't take responsibility if something happens." "The landlord? Are all the residents in this apartment tenants?" Yu Yuaqing asked. "Yes." The apartment manager nodded. "This is a group apartment for white-collar workers, and is specially rented out to migrant workers. There's only one landlord. This entire building belongs to him." "That's easy." Hearing this, Lotus Sun was instantly happy. When she took out her phone, Wang Ling already knew what she wanted to do. Lotus Sun dialed Old Master Sun's number and said, "Yes, Grandpa. Have you heard of an apartment called Conch Apartments? It's on Beihai Road." "Yes, I've taken a fancy to this building." "Can Grandpa buy it?" "It'll be done in 10 minutes, right?" Okay, I'll wait for Grandpa's news." Wang Ling, Yu Yuaqing, and the apartment manager were all dumbfounded. From their point of view, what Lotus Sun had just bought wasn't an apartment, but a walnut. Chapter 1842. Although the real estate purchase process wasn't as fast as expected, after Old Man's son gave the landlord an irresistible price, the landlord very quickly contacted the duty room to let the future owner go. The manager stared at Lotus Sun in utter astonishment. Was this what it meant to speculate on abilities? It was almost 8:00 at night, and Wang Ling was calm. He had finished all his homework at school today, so he could carry out his tasks without any worries. Handing in homework on time was also a manifestation of commitment and responsibility, and Father Wang was a very responsible person in this regard. Like many people who had already graduated and started working, he would occasionally dream of being criticized by his teacher for not finishing his homework. In the end, when he woke up with a start, he realized that he had already graduated and started working for several years. Holding the master key given to them by the duty room, the three of them took the elevator to that video blogger Li Xian's apartment. When they reached the door, Lotus Sun knocked politely. "Excuse me, is anyone home?" As she asked, she released her spiritual senses to check the apartment. After confirming that there was no one in the apartment, she opened the door with the master key. Wang Ling felt that this scene was a little familiar. In his memory, for example, Xiang Yi, the new guest official of Battle Sect, was an expert in this area. Back then, this guy had honed his skill at picking locks in an uninhabited wasteland, and had forcefully pried out the wealth of an empire. "Wait." Just as Lotus Sun was about to push open the door and enter, Yu Yuaqing called out to them. She took out a miniature camera from her storage bag and hung it on the lapel of her Taoist robe. Wang Ling frowned. Somehow, he felt that this miniature camera looked a little familiar. "What's this?" "A miniature camera. It's the same thing as a law enforcement recorder. Although you're the landlord now, if something happens in the apartment, it'll be hard to explain. So it's very important to prepare in advance." Saying this, she cupped her red face as if she was showing off and said to Lotus Sun, "To tell you the truth, this is Wang Ling's second birthday present for me." Speaking up to this point, Wang Ling instantly recalled the origin of this camera. In theory, this wasn't a gift from Wang Ling, but a token of Father and Mother Wang's goodwill. After all, Father and Mother Wang would arrange birthday gifts for Yu Yuqing every year during the best years of the Wang family's relationship with Yu Yuqing. Even if Wang Ling didn't arrange it, Father and Mother Wang would do it for him, and then have Wang Ling enchant them or add a blessing buff to them before giving them to them. Then, Wang Ling would be the one giving the gift. So don't underestimate this tiny camera. After being enlightened by Wang Ling, it could actually record things that other people couldn't see. All these years, Yu Yuqing had taken good care of the camera, and it was as good as new. She naturally noticed the magic of the miniature camera in her hand, and marveled at the power of modern cultivation technology. After all, there really weren't many cameras on the market that could directly capture ghosts and use the lens to directly transcend. Thus, Yu Yuqing had always been very moved. She knew that this miniature camera had to be very valuable, but she never expected Wang Ling to actually give it to her as a birthday present. Seeing Yu Yuqing showing off, Lotus Sun also felt a little helpless. It would be unrealistic to say that it wasn't sour. Her mouth was filled with bitterness. At the same time, she was a little envious of the childhood friendship between Yu Yuqing and Wang Ling. She had never experienced these things before. But in front of Yu Yuqing and Wang Ling, she couldn't appear too restless, otherwise she would definitely be treated as a joke. But it was still so annoying, she roared in her heart. Just like the groundhog standing in the mountains. Come on, let's go in. Once everything was ready, Yu Yuqing flicked her horsetail whisk with a smile and gestured for Lotus Sun to push the door open. Taking a deep breath, Lotus Sun straightaway turned the doorknob, and then accurately found the light switch to turn on the room. The apartment wasn't too big, being less than 40 square meters, but it had all the essentials: a kitchen, a bathroom, and a balcony. Conch apartments were apartments for young people, and were built in an entrepreneurial zone. They also received an annual subsidy from the higher-ups, so the rent wasn't particularly high. Li Xian was only 16, the age of a student. Furthermore, she had only recently started thinking about going out to work, so where did she get the rent from? It was impossible to ask the previous landlord about this. There was too much information on the tenants. If they asked the previous landlord directly which one was Li Xian, the previous landlord would probably be dumbfounded. Wang Ling looked around the apartment. It was clean, tidy, and could even be said to be spotless. Even if it was a girl's place, it was still a little too unworldly. Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing looked around, but didn't find any valuable clues. However, it was precisely this extremely clean room that made the two women suspicious. I think it's strange, Lotus Sun said. As a girl's room, there doesn't seem to be anything special in the wardrobe except for some girls' clothes. Everything is very clean, so clean that it looks like someone has cleaned it on purpose. Yu Yuqing agreed with Lotus Sunday. I agree with Miss Sun, there's definitely something wrong here. As she said this, she started to play with the video camera. From the moment they had entered the room, the video camera had been clean, and hadn't captured anything strange. Yu Yuqing frowned. Her sixth sense told her that there was definitely something wrong with this room, and it was very big. Wang Ling, what do you think? She asked curiously. When she turned her head, she saw Wang Ling looking at a white wall. She hurriedly used the video camera to take pictures of this white wall, but still didn't find anything. Is there something wrong with this wall? Yu Yuqing asked. Wang Ling didn't answer immediately. He had indeed noticed something, and was hesitating about whether or not he should do something about this problematic white wall. But at the same time, he felt that it was a little too early to do anything, and could easily alert the enemy and expose a lot of problems. Thus, after some hesitation, Wang Ling withdrew his hand. The fact that Yu Yuqing hadn't captured anything unusual seemed pretty normal to Wang Ling. After all, this birthday gift was almost 10 years old, and it had been done using version 1.0 of the enchantment spell, and he had done it in a perfunctory manner back then. Although the enchantment spell was more powerful than a regular video camera, it wouldn't be able to solve a serious problem. Take the current situation for example. The white wall they were facing. Wang Ling was the only one who could see the cryptic runes on the wall. Wang Ling was certain. These were the marks left behind by the Ancient Ones. Chapter 1843. It was already late at night. When Wang Ling faced this wall full of cryptic runes that ordinary people couldn't see through, he immediately knew that this was no longer something that Lotus Sun or Yu Yuqing could get involved in. If he continued to investigate with them, they would definitely run into danger. Even if he had already strengthened Lotus Sun to this level, these hidden ancient ones were cunning and full of tricks. Lotus Sun's lack of skill and experience would put her at a disadvantage, and combat strength couldn't make up for experience. As for Yu Yuqing, there was no need to say much. Although Wang Ling had given her a lot of enchanted birthday presents when she was young, it still wouldn't be enough to deal with the ancient ones. Thus, after staring blankly at the wall for a moment, Wang Ling shook his head and walked out of the apartment with his hands in the pockets of his school uniform as if nothing had happened. He deliberately didn't tell them what he had seen, and kept it all to himself without saying a word. As for Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing, they looked at each other before following Wang Ling out. Out of their understanding of Wang Ling, they each had their own plans. It was getting late, so the three of them decided to go home. Before leaving, Yu Yuqing added Wang Ling on WeChat, and then added Lotus Sun as well. Lotus Sun didn't refuse, she actually wanted to know more about Yu Yuqing, so she generously took out her phone and scanned the QR code. After obtaining their contact information, Yu Yuqing smiled brightly. I feel that Lotus Sun and I are actually very compatible. I can read your fortune for free later, and you can ask me anything you want. Lotus Sun replied with a natural and unrestrained smile. Alright, then I won't stand on ceremony. Thank you, Taoist Yu. Just call me Little Qing. No need to be so formal. If there's anything else you need my help with, just contact me on WeChat. Yu Yuqing narrowed her eyes slightly, then flicked her horsetail whisk and rode away on her ivory little white dragon. Wang Ling, did you see something? After watching Yu Yuqing leave, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking Wang Ling if he had seen anything in the room just now. She had asked this question after understanding Wang Ling. Although Wang Ling had expressionlessly said that there was nothing out of the ordinary in the apartment earlier, she could more or less sense that something wasn't right. Moreover, she believed that Yu Yuqing felt the same way. It was just that Yu Yuqing retreated in order to advance. Lotus Sun felt that she was increasingly unable to see through Yu Yuqing. But after asking this question, Wang Ling stared fixedly at her for a while, and finally shook his head. He waved goodbye to Lotus Sun, indicating that she should go back early. After waiting in the dark for a while to confirm that Lotus Sun had left the apartment, he reappeared at a hidden corner of the street and returned to the room he had just been in to face that strange white wall again. He activated his king's eye and dispersed the pure white mist on the white wall, revealing the mystical runes hidden behind it. After doing all this, he sat cross-legged on the ground and used his eye power to summon the three primordial ones who had been sealed in the eye universe. They were the skeleton prince of the undead, the lion man of the primordial lion clan, and Meng Lioli, the princess of the dream clan. Wang Ling had wanted to ask Monk Golden Lamp, Li Xian and Zhang Zipei to come as well, but that would have alerted the enemy. The three of them were now important elders of Battle Sect, and almost everyone in the sect would know that they were out on business. It would be bad if word got out. So Wang Ling summoned the three primordial ones who had been in the king's eye earlier, intending to listen to their opinions. Ever since Wang Ling had beaten them into submission in Glio City, the three primordial ones had completely lost their temper. Furthermore, they knew that the holy race had successfully compromised with Wang Ling, and had transferred all their contracts to him. What was even more unbelievable was that Wang Ling didn't care about the restrictions of these contracts at all. After obtaining them, he had burned them to ashes with the eternal fire of the king's eye. This meant that he wasn't worried at all that they would run away. On the other hand, he was fully confident in his own strength. Now, the skeleton prince, the lion man and Meng Lioli were looking forward to Wang Ling fulfilling his promise of utopia of the primordial ones. Without any contract binding them, they finally found freedom and the feeling of being respected. As for Wang Ling, who had already become their new boss, they were willing to stay by his side even if they didn't sign any labor contracts. Until Wang Ling had summoned them, the somewhat cultured skeleton prince had still been drafting an essay entitled, Wang Ling, My Superman. But now, when they saw the cryptic runes on the white wall in front of them, they looked at each other in dismay, and their expressions turned extremely solemn. This is... I remember seeing these mysterious runes in a battle with a certain clan. The skeleton prince immediately frowned as he recalled something from a long time ago, but it had been so long ago that it had to be traced back to when he was very young. The undead had an infinitely long lifespan to begin with. To be able to trace it back to when he was young was even more terrifying. Because when he was young, the rulers of the old days had still existed, but they were already at the end of the old days, and were far from as glorious as they had been in their heyday. There are a few suspicious eternal-level forces who are good at using this mysterious rune to write formulas and create arrays and secret techniques, the Lion Man replied, scratching his head. It's been a long time, but I should be able to confirm it with some time. At that moment, Manglioli continued, I just need to search through the dreams. This is a unique ability of the Dream Clan. They have a record of all the dreams they have invaded before, and can compile it into a huge dream network that can be shared in the spiritual space. As long as I confirm the approximate time frame, I'll be able to do a precise search, and I'll have results soon. Saying this, she sat down cross-legged and started to work without another word. Wang Ling was very satisfied with her efficiency. Elsewhere, when Lotus Sun arrived home, the head maid surnamed Xiao immediately came to greet her. Miss, you're finally back. You have a friend waiting for you in the living room. Friend? Lotus Sun stared blankly for a moment, then followed the head maid with a doubtful expression. When she reached the living room, a familiar snow-white figure appeared in front of her. It was none other than Yu Yuqing. We meet again, classmate Lotus Sunday. Yu Yuqing didn't stand on ceremony, and immediately stood up from the sofa to look at her with a smile, as if she were the host and guest. Lotus Sun took a deep breath. She had never expected Yu Yuqing to retreat at the entrance of the apartment in order to advance, and actually retreat directly to her house. What kind of show was this? It's already very late. Is something the matter, Daoist Yu? Lotus Sun asked, trying hard to maintain her composure. I just have a few questions that I'm a little curious about. Yu Yuqing rubbed her chin and carefully looked Lotus Sun up and down. She then slowly walked over, and as she got closer, she couldn't help smiling as she looked at Lotus Sunday. I actually want to ask, do you like Wang Ling? Chapter 1844. Lotus Sun was completely taken aback by Yu Yuqing's straightforwardness, and her flushed face clearly showed her utter astonishment. She had never expected Yu Yuqing to come directly to her house at night and even ask her such a blunt question. So, was this a provocation? Lotus Sun shook her head inwardly, but didn't think so. When Yu Yuqing had said this, she hadn't sensed the slightest bit of murderous intent. On the contrary, she had felt a sense of déjà vu, as if she had been teased. Lotus Sun was all too familiar with this feeling. It was just like how Audiobook liked to tease her and call her mistress. Now that the question had been thrown at her, Lotus Sun felt that if she didn't give an answer, it would be too petty of her, and it would seem that she cared a lot. It was just Wang Ling, a mere blockhead. What was there about him that she cared so much about? After doing her best to restrain her emotions, Lotus Sun took a deep breath, looked at Yu Yuqing, and summoned up her courage to reply, Daoist Yu is right, you're absolutely right. I like Wang Ling. Sure enough, I've calculated it correctly again. Also, let me tell you a little secret. Yu Yuqing narrowed her eyes and smiled, then grabbed Lotus Sun's hand. I like him too. Lotus Sun, Yu Yuqing smiled. What's so strange about that? It's normal for cute boys to be liked by a lot of people. In any case, we haven't officially established a relationship, right? So it can only be considered a fair competition now. Lotus Sun's heart hurt a little when she heard this. She smacked her lips and felt a bitter taste in her mouth, but she couldn't find any reason to refute it. There was no such thing as first come, first served when liking someone, and no one said that Wang Ling had to be hers. It could only be said that Yu Yuqing was a very difficult opponent, and this was the first time Lotus Sun had felt this way. This Taoist priest was far from being as naive as Jiang Yingying, who would be easily dismissed. Lotus Sun felt that she was in for a tough fight. Did Taoist priest come to see me tonight just to ask this? If there's anything else, do you want to sit down and talk? Contrary to Yu Yueqing's expectations, Lotus Sun was much more composed than she had expected. Not only did she not have any intention of driving her away, she even took the initiative to let her stay. Then, Lotus Sun clapped her hands and had the head maid serve tea and snacks. A sweet smell immediately wafted out, and the light purple tea sparkled with starlight, as if the Milky Way was reflected on the surface of the lake at night. Yu Yueqing took a sip and smacked her lips. She didn't wait for Lotus Sun's introduction before exclaiming in pleasant surprise, "It's made of top-grade moonlight grass, right?" Lotus Sun was astonished. She hadn't expected Yu Yueqing to be so knowledgeable about the tea ceremony, and to be able to identify the type with just one sip. The spirit tea brewed from top-grade moonlight grass had the effect of calming the mind and nourishing the mind. It was extremely suitable for consumption at night, and it also had the ability to improve one's memory. While drinking tea, one would be able to memorize the knowledge in one's mind. This effect could last for several months. It was exam season soon, and Lotus Sun always prepared more at home. But moonlight grass was expensive, and because of the harsh conditions under which it grew, there was a limited amount of it that could be farmed. This top-grade moonlight grass, on the other hand, grew in the natural environment, and there were strict harvesting standards every year, so it was even rarer. 1 gram of tea grass could be sold for immortal gold. Leisurely sipping her tea, Yu Yueqing was in a very good mood. Looking at Lotus Sun's seemingly unruffled face, she found it a little funny. After a few minutes, Yu Yueqing got down to business. "It seems that classmate Lotus Sun still doesn't treat me as a friend. I clearly told you to call me Little Qing, but you still call me Taoist Yu." Lotus Sun: "No, Little Qing, you're thinking too much. You don't have to force yourself to call me that. I understand very well that we're competitors, after all, and there's nothing wrong with being respectful." Yu Yueqing put down the teacup in her hand and said elegantly and naturally, "Then I want to hear what you think of Wang Ling. For example, what can you detect from him when he's in the apartment?" These words put Lotus Sun on guard. Yu Yueqing didn't know Wang Ling's true strength, but she was asking this question. Did she already sense something from him? She was very puzzled. After a moment of silence, Lotus Sun said, "There's clearly something wrong with that apartment, but Wang Ling says there's nothing wrong with it." "Yes." Yu Yueqing nodded heavily and said, "It's clear that he doesn't want us to take part in the investigation, and he's already found some clues about the apartment. But Wang Ling's strength is the same as ours, so why is he so confident to take part in the investigation alone?" Lotus Sun's throat involuntarily rolled at this question, and for the first time, she sensed a sharp aura emanating from Yu Yueqing. She even suspected that it was very likely that Yu Yueqing knew something. Lotus Sun was hesitating about how to tell Yu Yueqing this. Unexpectedly, Yu Yueqing smiled slightly at that moment. "I know what you want to say, classmate Lotus Sunday. Or perhaps you've already sensed it, right?" "Sensed what?" "That is, Wang Ling isn't an ordinary person." After Yu Yueqing said this, Lotus Sun's eyebrows instantly furrowed slightly. Yu Yueqing immediately noticed this subtle change in expression, and after seeing Lotus Sun's expression, she was even more certain of her guess. "Sure enough, you've also sensed it. Wang Ling has always been low-key and has hidden himself very well. But if you get closer to him, sooner or later you'll also notice that there's something unusual about him." "I don't know what Taoist Yu is talking about." Lotus Sun was stupefied by Yu Yueqing's words. "Don't worry, classmate Lotus Sunday. I didn't intend to tell anyone about Wang Ling, and seeing you like this, I'm a lot more at ease. You've probably been helping him hide it all along, right? Even covering for him?" Yu Yueqing laughed. "I'm not stupid. The birthday presents Wang Ling gave me all had strange abilities. From this alone, I can tell that he's not an ordinary person. You're probably like me, right? Did you observe the situation from the details?" That's right. Lotus Sun said awkwardly. Her emotions were intertwined and extremely complicated. She had never thought that Yu Yuqing would actually be able to sense Wang Ling's hidden strength from the details, and she was completely different from Yu Yuqing. At this thought, Lotus Sun's face couldn't help turning slightly red. Because of Wang Ling's secret. In some sense, it was Wang Ling himself who had told her. Chapter 1845. In the face of Yu Yuqing's menacing aura, this was the first time Lotus Sun had the misconception that she wouldn't be able to hold her own. She had never thought that someone would actually be able to guess that Wang Ling was out of the ordinary based on her intuition alone. This woman was very dangerous, more dangerous than any of the people Lotus Sun had dealt with before. She looked simple, but was far less so than Jiang Yingying, and even more shrewd than Ryoko Kwamiya. Furthermore, she gave off a foggy feeling that no matter how hard you concentrated, you couldn't see through her. While Lotus Sun was in a daze, Yu Yuqing put on a calm and unhurried expression again and said, "So now, this is the secret that classmate Lotus Sun and I share. I don't want to cause trouble for Wang Ling, so I've kept it a secret." She didn't ask Lotus Sun how she had sensed Wang Ling's true strength, and instead chose to skip this part. The main thing was that Yu Yuqing felt that she and Lotus Sun hadn't known each other for very long, and it was already a little rude to drop by without any notice tonight. Thus, she didn't want to appear nosy and ask endless questions like a curious baby. Furthermore, even if she did ask, she felt that Lotus Sun wouldn't answer her so honestly, and would most likely find an excuse that didn't fit the facts. After all, she and Lotus Sun weren't that familiar yet. Furthermore, it was very clear that Lotus Sun was wary of her. So given the current situation, it wasn't time for her to be completely honest. For Yu Yuqing, helping to investigate that video blogger Li Xian wasn't the key. The key was to use this opportunity to get closer to Wang Ling and Lotus Sunday. When that time came, it would be time for her to speak up. "What do you think about that video blogger?" Yu Yuqing asked again at that moment. "It's clear that Wang Ling doesn't want us to get involved. This means that there might be something very dangerous behind this," Lotus Sun said. "If we force our way in, I'm afraid we'll cause trouble for Wang Ling. So, it's better not to do anything." "That's true." Yu Yuqing nodded and said, "But I think we can still do some logistics work, right? For example, I recently discovered a mysterious organization that seems to have something to do with Wang Ling. I think it'll be very dangerous in the long run. It's not good for Wang Ling to hide his strength." "What organization?" "I think it's called Grey Sect." In that video blogger Li Xian's apartment, the meeting between Wang Ling and the three Eternal Emperors was still going on. Meng Liuli's eyes glowed with the color of an aurora. She was trying her best to read through the records of the dream invasion. Found it. About 10 minutes later, she took out a wordless jade tube from her sleeve and projected everything she saw in the spiritual space onto the jade tube. "Which race's language is it?" the skeleton prince asked. "Currently, I'm not sure which clan it belongs to, but the mysterious text that I'm projecting into the jade tube is from the library of the East Great Emperor's palace," Meng Liuli said. "Eastern Great Emperor?" Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. He had never heard of this name before, but he felt that this person was not simple. The Lion Man then explained, in ancient times, all the races were at loggerheads with one another. In order to survive, some of the weaker clans would form alliances. At their peak, they were divided into 4 camps, and the East Great Emperor was one of them. "Then what about Dao Ancestor Wang?" At that moment, Wang Ying's voice came from Wang Ling's body. "Dao Ancestor Wang appears and disappears unpredictably, and has no interest in participating in the disputes of these ancient clans. He has no interest in leading the ancient ones, and only appears to mediate when there are irreconcilable conflicts between the clans." The Skeleton Prince said, "This is the Dao Ancestor's view of the big picture, even those self-proclaimed great emperors can't compare. Of course, to be able to become great emperors back then, there's no need to doubt their strength. We once relied on these 4 great emperors and wanted to run for the throne, but it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. So now it seems that this mysterious text was most likely written by one of the four great emperors? Wang Ying asked in place of Wang Ling. Not necessarily. Meng Liuli shook her head and said, members of my clan once invaded the dream of the pavilion master of the East Great Emperor's imperial palace, and it was through his dream that we found this mysterious text. The information in the imperial palace's sutra depository is very complicated, so the mysterious text might not have been written by the East Great Emperor. However, it's very clear that the East Great Emperor has already deciphered the text and used it to write a diary. Write a diary? At the scene, Wang Ling, Wang Ying, the Skeleton Prince and the Lion Man all looked puzzled at the same time. The first half of the Jade Tube is a record of all kinds of mysterious text in the Sutra Depository, while the second half was written by the East Great Emperor. The timeline of the contents is later than the first half, so I suspect that the East Great Emperor wrote it after deciphering the mysterious text, Meng Liuli said. An emperor writing a diary in the mysterious text that he had just learned. What kind of operation was this? So the emperor also writes a diary? The Lion Man couldn't help teasing at this thought. That's right, which decent person would write a diary? The Skeleton Prince also nodded. Speaking up to this point, the Skeleton Prince paused and asked, Lion, do you write a diary? The Lion Man, I don't. What about you, Skeleton? The Skeleton Prince, who would write the truth in a diary? Can what is written in a diary be the truth? The two of them burst into laughter at this point and shouted, despicable, in unison. But Wang Ling now had a completely different view of the East Great Emperor writing a diary in the mysterious text. This clever East Great Emperor had deciphered the mysterious text and even used it to write a diary, so he had to be very confident in the secrecy of the text, to the extent that he didn't believe that anyone could decipher it. Therefore, using the reverse logic to consider, the things that the Great East Emperor wrote in his diary might really be true words. It might even involve a series of ancient secrets. Wang Ling had thought that Meng Liuli would be able to quickly find out who on earth was using this mysterious text in the myriad ancient tribe. In the end, Meng Liuli had unexpectedly directly found this East Great Emperor's diary. So now, it seemed that there was only one way for Wang Ling to crack it, that was to use his power of sight to forcibly decipher the mysterious text, and then translate it into a language that was closest to modern writing. But these mysterious texts were extremely obscure, and Wang Ling was worried that in the process of deciphering it, his eye might suffer unprecedented pressure. If his king's eye was damaged, that would be bad. So as a precaution, Wang Ling had already thought of a way to prevent this from happening. Thinking this, he pressed his palm against the ground and immediately summoned a glass display case. And what was sealed inside were all kinds of pupils. At this point, the Skeleton Prince, Meng Liuli, the Lion Man and Wang Ying were all stupefied. Wang Ling took off his king's eye with practiced ease and stored it in the glass case like he was replacing contact lenses. Then, he took out a new pair of pupils and put them back in his eye sockets. Chapter 1846. There were a total of 49 pairs of eyes in the display case, which were the variables of Tao. Each eye was born of Tao and had completely different abilities, and could be perfectly used in different situations. In the end, Wang Ling was still cautious. He didn't want the king's eye to be damaged while deciphering the mysterious text, so he had decided to change the eyes before deciphering them. All the eyes in the display case had their own serial numbers, and the king's eye was number 49. And now, he had directly chosen eye 01. Tao 01 eye, deceitful peeping magic eye. Its appearance is orange and green, and its pupils are in the shape of stars. It has the ability to distinguish all deceitful people and deceitful objects. It can also use the power of deceit for its own use to deceive a certain target. Wang Ling knew all the descriptions of the king's eyes. The reason why he had chosen eye 01 was entirely because it was a very powerful illusion spell and was very deceptive. Who knew, he might be able to directly decipher the mysterious text when it wasn't paying attention. After installing it, Wang Ling didn't think too much about it, and directly stared at the mysterious text on the jade tube. After staring at it for 5 or 6 minutes, he abruptly closed the jade tube. Then, with a bang, the orange-green liquid of the eye splattered everywhere, and I-01 actually exploded on the spot like a cow's eye on a barbecue stand. This, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man and Meng Lioli looked horrified at the same time. They had never expected to see such a frightening scene. But it seemed that Wang Ling had already predicted this situation, and was exceptionally calm. He used the primer spell to gather up the exploded liquid of the eye, then took off I-01 and put it back in the display case. The King's Eye display case had the effect of repairing the eyes, but the damage to I-01 was too severe, and it would probably take several years for it to return to its peak condition. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Sure enough, he had been right to be cautious. If he directly used the King's Eye and it got damaged, it would mean that his combat strength would be reduced in some sense, and would instead give evildoers an opportunity to deal with him. The King's Eye was I-49. Although it could be repaired in the King's Eye display case after it was damaged, who knew how long it would take for it to recover? The later the number of eyes, the longer it would take to repair them. In fact, Wang Ling's choice of eyes to decipher the diary of East Great Emperor was also a test of his own strength. He could see that there was something strange about the diary of the Eastern Great Emperor. Since this was an emperor-level character that had once led an ancient race, his strength was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, his strength was several levels higher than these ancient imperial races' ancient race. The fact that the other party was familiar with the mysterious language and had even written a diary in the mysterious language showed that he was extremely confident in his own strength. This meant that he wasn't afraid that others would see the diary, and even if they did, they wouldn't be able to decipher it. In the worst-case scenario, even if it was really deciphered, it was normal for a great emperor to set some magic traps inside. For example, when Wang Ling had just used Dao-01 to test the waters, he had suffered a backlash from the magic trap. Generally speaking, this could only mean that the eye he was using didn't have the ability to directly decipher the diary and resist the magic traps hidden in it. Thus, the second time around, Wang Ling directly chose Dao-016 to directly upgrade the level of the eye. Dao-016 Eye, Resplendent Dark Forest Holy Eye. It is black and white on the outside and pure white in the center. It has the ability to probe and attack an unknown civilization. When an unknown civilization tries to damage the Holy Eye will display its greatest power and counterattack. After silently reciting the details of Dao-016 Eye, Wang Ling thought that after the King's Eye, this should be the eye most suitable for deciphering the mysterious language. After all, to the vast majority of cultivators, the mysterious language belonged to an unknown civilization. Now that East Great Emperor had written the mysterious language and set up a trap inside, as long as the Holy Eye was damaged, the defense mechanism would be directly triggered and the mysterious language would be instantly swallowed up and its hidden meaning would be analyzed. Following the previous steps, Wang Ling continued to stare at the jade tube. This time, the mysterious language in the diary of East Great Emperor didn't harm Dao-016 Eye. Furthermore, Wang Ling could clearly sense that the mysterious characters on the jade tubes floated out of them like feathers. Then, it drifted all over the sky. Looks like it worked. Meng Lioli was pleasantly surprised and curious. She was also very interested in the contents of the diary of East Great Emperor, and wondered what was written inside. But at that moment it was as if Wang Ling was completely immersed in the world of the diary of East Great Emperor, and didn't respond to the calls of the outside world. The crimson crescent moon hung high in the sky, shining on the silent city in the alien land. Iron fortresses built from black iron rose from the ground one after another, like small mountains. Wang Ling had never expected that after Dao-016 I analyzed the mysterious language in the diary of East Great Emperor, it would actually be able to bring about such an immersive experience. That was right. At that moment, Wang Ling had transformed into the appearance of East Great Emperor from ancient times, and had begun to play the role of East Great Emperor in this diary. At the same time, this was also Wang Ling's first time seeing the style of the ancient cultivation world. He had thought that the ancient cultivation world should have been the most unsophisticated civilization, full of all kinds of prehistoric beasts, undeveloped areas, terrifying secret lands, and primitive tribes where hundreds of schools of thought contended, It was only at that moment that Wang Ling realized that the ancient cultivators had already built buildings that resembled modern civilization on this alien land. This was a world where ancient and modern intertwined, with traces of modern architecture, while retaining the grandeur of ancient architecture. So, from ancient times to the present, it wasn't an evolution, but a continuation? Or was it a reincarnation? Wang Ling was lost in thought. East Great Emperor's imperial palace still retained its majestic imperial style. Wang Ling stood at the top of the city, the flames of the beacons behind him making half his face look red in the dark of the night. His dark golden robes were embroidered with the image of a vermilion bird, and his wide and long sleeves billowed in the strong wind. His sword-like eyebrows were raised, and East Great Emperor stood on the great wall with his hands behind his back, exuding the aura of a king that could intimidate the world. His pupils were deep, but different from the black jade of the past. At that moment, East Great Emperor's pupils had already transformed into the appearance of Dao 016 eye, which indicated that Wang Ling was using an eye technique to temporarily experience the life recorded by East Great Emperor in this diary. Emperor. At that moment, a young man with skin as fair as jade and long flowing hair flew over on a sword from afar and landed directly next to Wang Ling. All the character information and the following script instantly appeared in Wang Ling's mind. This young man was East Great Emperor's Imperial Palace's white-robed chief steward and military commander, Yi Ren. Wang Ling didn't need to speak at all, and his body automatically responded to Yi Ren according to the script in the diary. What's the matter? West Great Emperor's envoy is here. Emperor, do you want to meet him? He said that if you want a truce, you must agree to all their demands. Yi Ren said at that moment, bowing with his hands folded in front. Chapter 1847. Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing discussed how to better cover for Wang Ling for over an hour. Friendship between girls was sometimes wonderful. With a common goal in mind, the two of them felt that they were much closer to each other. Lotus Sun also felt that Yu Yuqing wasn't as dangerous as before. But she still hadn't completely let down her guard. Later on, Yu Yuqing even started to use the camera to play a video of the two of them celebrating their birthdays together, which made Lotus Sun extremely envious. It wasn't like she hadn't seen Wang Ling as a child at home before, but little Wang Ling could move in the video. This made Lotus Sun wild with joy. Little Wang Ling was really too cute. When little Yu Yuqing had held his arm, his unsmiling little face had been full of helplessness. Just by looking at his expression, Lotus Sun could imagine what he had been thinking at the time. It could only be said that little Wang Ling was too easy to understand. Even if he didn't have any expression on his face, how could a child have any bad intentions? As Yu Yuqing played the video, she switched skillfully. This display wasn't to show off, but purely to share. Seeing Lotus Sun's unblinking gaze, she immediately said, "Do you want me to make a copy for you later? You can use the AI to change your face. You can just change my face to yours when you were a child." Is that okay? Lotus Sun was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, she hadn't expected Yu Yuqing to actually say that. Why not? In any case, it's all in the past. It's a fair competition now. Yu Yuqing smiled generously and meaningfully. That's right, I remember there was a video of Wang Ling almost destroying the Earth. Destroy the Earth? Yes, he almost fell when he was a child. Luckily, Uncle and Auntie reacted quickly and pulled him up right away. Let me look for this video. I remember it's in my camera. Yu Yuqing frowned slightly and started to look for the relevant video. She fiddled with the button, but the video suddenly switched to the footage from when they had just entered Li Xian's apartment. Wait. At that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly reached out and pressed the pause button. Is there a problem? Look, that white wall. I think there are words on it, said Lotus Sunday, did I? Yu Yuqing frowned and stared at the camera for a long time. Sure enough, she vaguely found that on the white wall that was captured by the camera, there were a few characters that were faintly emitting white light. However, because these characters were the same color as the wall, they were not very obvious and were very dim. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see them. What is this? Lotus Sun was puzzled. The thing Wang Ling hid from us earlier was these characters, right? He felt that these runes might be dangerous. That should be the case. Yu Yuqing nodded and said, but I feel like these characters are familiar, as if I've seen them somewhere before. You've seen it before? Lotus Sun was even more puzzled. I remember that the Manor Lord once wrote something similar, but I'm not sure if it's the same type. Yu Yuqing said. This was a new clue. Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing had originally decided not to get involved in this matter, but this accidental discovery suddenly evoked a strong desire to investigate. What surprised Lotus Sun even more was that the mysterious characters on the white wall actually had something to do with the Manor Lord of Wind Thunder Manor. That was to say, this old Manor Lord might actually be one of the people involved in the sudden disappearance of this vlogger Li Xian. This accidental discovery made Lotus Sun and Yu Yuqing feel the complexity of the matter, as if a pair of invisible hands were pushing the whole thing forward. We have to ask the Manor Lord. Yu Yuqing immediately made the decision. That's not stable. Lotus Sun said, we still have to be more conservative. It's too risky with just the two of us. How about this? I know a few seniors. If we call them along, we'll be safe. Seniors? Yu Yuqing had a suspicious expression on her face. Then, Lotus Sun immediately took out her phone and sent a private message to each of the core management members of Battle Sect. Odd Zhua, Monk Golden Lamp, Li Xian, Zhang Zipei, Qin Zong, Xiang Yi, Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, these 9 people. In a short instant, Lotus Sun notified them all. Elsewhere, Wang Ling was still experiencing the events of the past in East Great Emperor's diary. His body's movements and conversations were automatic. Although he was already in his body and could control it, he didn't act rashly. If the events recorded in the diary were true, that meant that the diary itself represented a true event from the past. Wang Ling felt that if he did anything unusual or went against the normal behavior recorded in the diary, he could change history. Led by this white-robed chief steward Yi Ren, Wang Ling finally saw the envoy sent by West Great Emperor in the main hall of East Great Emperor's imperial palace. The envoy was dressed in a pitch-black robe and had a long white beard that cascaded down to his toes like a waterfall. Even in the face of East Great Emperor, this envoy didn't show any fear, and didn't care about East Great Emperor's imperial majesty at all. In such an environment, he stretched his hand out from the black robe and revealed a silver dagger. There was a mark of the 9-headed devil's snake on it, which was the symbol of the West deity. It symbolized that he had come on behalf of the West deity. There was no doubt that this was an extremely rude provocation. Yi Ren was about to flare up, but the envoy of East Great Emperor stopped him with a meaningful look. But even East Great Emperor had obviously never seen such an arrogant envoy before. Then, he still sat on the wide golden vermilion bird throne in the posture of an emperor and accepted the worship of this envoy of West Great Emperor. External Envoy Yan Sanyang greets East Great Emperor. May East Great Emperor's great fortune fill the heavens. The voice wasn't too loud, but it echoed in the empty palace. Except for white-robed Chief Steward Yi Ren and a few old officials, the palace, which had originally been home to more than 100 officials, seemed incomparably empty under the echo of this shout. Based on the current development of the plot, Wang Ling could roughly guess that there had been a coup in East Great Emperor's imperial palace not long ago. Most of the officials in East Great Emperor's camp had switched sides, and now only these few people in the main hall were left to negotiate. Wang Ling hid in this East Great Emperor's body and patiently waited for the next development of the plot. Then, he heard what this envoy of West Great Emperor, Yan Sanyang, said. Yan Sanyang, in addition to reparations and the division of the Star Territory, I, West Master, have an additional request. If East Great Emperor agrees, we will release all the prisoners of war and immediately withdraw from the Star Territory. Hearing this, East Great Emperor was silent for a moment before he spoke in a deep and dignified voice. Let's hear it. I heard that East Great Emperor found a lost outer god palace on Carefree Star. It is said that there is a fragment of a top outer god's heart inside. Yen Sanyang said, I, West Great Emperor, request that East Great Emperor hand over what he found in this outer god palace. These words immediately caught Wang Ling's attention. A fragment of a top outer god's heart? That mysterious thing that was later called Mandate of Heaven? The thing that Dao ancestor Wang had tried to seal after discovering it back then? Chapter 1848. Although Yen Sanyang's words seemed respectful, they were actually full of contempt. He didn't take this East Great Emperor seriously at all. He was very confident and had obviously come prepared. This was because he was not the only one who was sent to the East region. At this moment, the diplomatic group formed by the command of the West Emperor was waiting outside the East Emperor's palace in an orderly manner. Dozens of elders were the elites of the elites. Every single one of them had limitless potential, and they were all top-notch geniuses among the ancient ones. If they could obtain enough resources, they would definitely become almighty existences in the future, and they might even be able to form their own clans and compete for the position of Great Emperor. Such a terrible sense of oppression was like dark clouds covering the sun, wrapping the periphery of the East Great Emperor's imperial palace tightly, as if it would pour in at any moment. Wang Ling had already sensed this danger when he had been on the walls of the imperial palace earlier. He had been watching the show, and didn't know how this East Great Emperor would deal with it, let alone whether he had already sensed the danger outside. This was a group of terrible ancient ones, and each of them had the power to destroy a clan at will. They had already become a symbol of the divide in strength between the East and the West territories. In the East Great Emperor's palace, sitting on the supreme vermilion bird throne, he still didn't move, as if he had already expected this scene. His eyes were steady and confident as he glanced at Yen Sanyang, the envoy from the West. The vermilion bird's fire lingered around him, and his eyes burned, giving off a strong sense of deterrence. But Yen Sanyang knew that there was a lot of backup behind him. Even though he was frightened by the stare, he still braced himself. I hope East Great Emperor clearly understands how important this truce is to the East Territory. With this agreement, our two territories will be on good terms for at least 100 years and won't disturb each other. It will also give the East Territory some time to rest. If the East Great Deity is unwilling to accept my West Deity's favor, then you'd better be fully prepared for the consequences that will follow. He put his hands behind his back and spoke with a domineering face. In the end, he lost all his patience in the palace hall and revealed a ferocious look. Yen Sanyang, are you threatening my king? White-robed General Manager Yiren berated. He couldn't hold himself back either. The natural laws on his body surged and spiritual light surged. He had a strong urge to kill Yen Sanyang and then be satisfied. At this moment, the atmosphere in the large palace suddenly turned cold. The two sides who were confronting each other were at daggers drawn, and it seemed like a fight would break out at any moment. However, at this moment, the Great East Emperor suddenly laughed. Yiren, don't be impatient. Immediately after, he stood up from the supreme throne and looked down at Yen Sanyang with a disdainful gaze. West Deity, are you that interested in the outer deity palace that I discovered? Of course. Yen Sanyang snorted and said. If I say that I found a mysterious item in this outer deity palace that can directly destroy a region, would the Western region still dare to touch me? The East Emperor narrowed his eyes and a ruthless look flashed across his face. His expression made Yen Sanyang sweat profusely. Because this was what the Great West Emperor was most worried about, the Outer Deity Palace was formed by the Outer Deity, a top expert among the rulers of the old days. It condensed all the power of the Outer Deity. Although it was called the Tomb of the Outer Deity, it was actually the essence of the Outer Deity's soul. If it could be successfully explored, it would definitely be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. However, apart from the few emperors and Dao ancestor Wang, there was probably no one else who dared to break into the Outer Deity Palace. The Great West Emperor was obsessed with this Outer Deity Palace and wanted to take it down. The most important reason was that he was worried that the Great East Emperor would enter the Outer Deity Palace alone and obtain something that he couldn't deal with. Those outer deities were powerful. Even if they were dead, the power of the items in the palace was still amazing. Therefore, the destruction of a region that the Great East Emperor said was not a joke. The most likely outcome was mutual destruction. In just a few words, Yan Sanyang was choked and speechless. But soon, he tried hard to regain his composure. Since the start of the war between the eastern and western regions, the Great East Emperor had been personally commanding the frontline battles. According to reason, there should be no opportunity to enter the outer deity palace to explore the secrets. Even if he did enter, the interior of the outer deity palace was too dangerous. Even if an emperor-level character entered without sufficient preparation, he would most likely die. He wouldn't be able to come out in a short period of time. In such a short period of time, this was an impossible task. In addition, the Great East Emperor looked unscathed. This made Yan Sanyang even more convinced that the Great East Emperor was deceiving him. Great East Emperor, if you have this ability, you should have used it earlier. In the main hall, after Yan Sanyang understood everything, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. In front of the supreme vermilion bird throne, the Great East Emperor saw this scene and his eyes became colder. His aura suddenly rose and directly oppressed Yan Sanyang. You are just a foreign envoy. You are not qualified to be so arrogant with me. The sound wave was transmitted, like the cry of the vermilion bird and the phoenix, with an extremely ear-piercing sound that shook the entire main hall. All the people on the Great East Emperor's side looked calm, but this phoenix cry instantly shocked Yan Sanyang to the point where he bled from his 7 orifices. That kind of ear-piercing memory constantly rippled in his mind, making his brain tumble. He knelt on the main hall on the spot. Boom! The Great East Emperor's body didn't move. He just raised a hand and pressed forward. A vermilion bird's shadow whizzed out from his sleeve, shocking everyone in the main hall. Under the deafening cry of the vermilion bird, all the people outside the Great East Emperor's imperial palace were alarmed. They instantly knew that the negotiation had collapsed. Rush in. Save Envoy Yen. The West Emperor has ordered that whoever takes the head of the Great East Emperor can become the new emperor. The envoys entrenched outside had already seen this scene. Every one of them seemed to have expected this scene and had made preparations. Once the negotiation collapsed, they would rush into the main hall together. However, the strength of the Great Emperor was incomparably amazing. When they approached the main hall, the envoy sent by the Great West Emperor, Yan Sanyang, had already died tragically. His face was scorched black, and he was directly roasted into a charred corpse by the vermilion bird's fire. His body was in a strange shape, and he died in extreme pain. Everything happened too fast, and they couldn't protect Yan Sanyang at all. At this time, looking at the dozens of Western region envoys suddenly breaking into the Great East Emperor's imperial palace, the Great East Emperor remained motionless. He looked down at the crowd of heroes and fixed his eyes on the crowd with the symbol of the 9-headed snake in front of him. The white-robed general manager, Yi Ren, looked at these people and instantly felt that the situation was not good. These people were carefully selected experts of the Western region, and each of them had the bloodline of the royal family. They were strong competitors for the Great Emperor in the future. In fact, even Yi Ren wouldn't have thought that the Great East Emperor, who had always been calm, would actually kill Yan Sanyang so bluntly. Although Yan Sanyang had provoked him first, the death of this foreign envoy meant that the negotiation had collapsed. At the same time, it also provided this group of elders from the Western region with an excuse to launch a new round of war. At this time, several old officials, led by Yi Ren, were solemnly waiting in the Great East Emperor's imperial palace. Even though this was an irreversible situation, everyone's faces showed that they were unafraid of death. Wang Ling was slightly moved by this scene. He had never witnessed a battle between ancient beings with his own eyes, and had never expected to see it so clearly today. It was like watching an epic battle between royal families. All the contentions in front of him were a game of power between ancient cultivators from ancient times. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.